So just in case you guys are not on my side of the internet, though, you did request for me to follow or to talk about this, and I follow Britt Hartley, so easy. Matt Dillahunty, who I used to follow, but kind of fell off because he became a little bit like old school atheist thoughts. And old school atheist men, they have a blind spot we're going to talk about today, where when women do philosophy, when women do spirituality, they just write it off as like silly or ridiculous, which is also the criticism I usually get around my levels, is like, I am offering a philosophical framework, but because the men can't engage with it, they just assume it's bad, but it's instead of questioning why they can't engage in it. So you're going to see that happen with Matt Dillahunty here. But he made a video he says spirituality is nonsense. And I watched the whole video on my own. We're not going to watch it together because Britt's going to make a response video to it here. And she's going to go through the video on her own. I have not watched her message about it, but I want to highlight some things first. First, Matt Dillahunty is an icon in the atheist community. He's been around a long time. He infamously had a really good conversation with Jordan Peterson, in which Jordan Peterson said, apparently doing shrooms can be like spiritual and proof of otherworldly things. And Matt Dillahunty saying it's not, it's just drugs. I will just say, as a woman who's done a lot of shrooms in her life, I will say doing shrooms can be a spiritual experience, but the spiritual experience is the relationship you're having to the chemicals in your brain. So it neither proves that something exists outside of the chemicals in my brain, and yet does prove the experience the chemicals in my brain are having are so profound. It feels and is explained through spiritualism. But I think Matt is, and Jordan Peterson is, the problem they have is they want it to be one or the other. Jordan wants it to be a sign that God is real, and Matt Dillahunty wants it to be nothing but boring chemicals in which nothing matters now. And I'm like, ugh. And I'm like, okay, can I do the other thing? And I've interviewed Britt Hartley, so you guys know her and I have talked, and we sort of agree on this point that it's both. You're having, yes, a chemical reaction. Like, I'm in love with my partner. This is an example I use. I'm deeply in love with my partner. I really feel like on one side, the universe must have brought us together. This is so amazing. This is the most magical experience I've ever had. I've never felt so seen by a person. And I know it's just actually high compatibility. There's a math to it. There's a numbers game to it. There's obviously for the people we are right now, there's so you can have both things. You can have like, this feels like the most magical thing that's ever happened to me. And realistically, it's just about a compatibility. But the compatibility is so good, it might as well be magic. But it's not magic, right? So Matt has this response to Britt, right? And then in the comment sections, the chat really felt like this was an attack on Britt Hartley. Throughout his video, he does not name her. He does not make a response to her. He simply, obviously, has watched a lot of videos on spirituality, and hers were one of them, because he kept saying like, oh, spirituality and like no nonsense, like spirituality. But he's not saying no nonsense spirituality, like naming Britt's channel. He's saying it as if he just saw her TikTok and it's just coming to his mind. So I don't actually think he was subtweeting Britt, but I think it looks that way regardless of how we feel. I have a feeling he just thought it was an interesting topic, had just seen a couple of her TikToks along with other people's, and just wanted to talk about it. That, in good faith, is how I feel about his content. As I say that, though, he also did this. This comment says, you owe Britt an apology, and he just wrote LOL. LOL? LOL? And then I realized, like, sir, like, listen, I, in good faith, don't want to think he's subtweeting her, but honestly, he might be. Okay, he might be, because that was crazy. LOL? Okay, so just to get the vibe off of his original content, and his underlining concern that I also share, he's just concerned, which I think we should all be, with scams. He's concerned that these spiritual gurus, which Teal Swan comes to mind, might be offering people salvation through a non-religious course. And Britt does have courses, and Britt does do coaching. And I think branding wise, Britt is in a really tough place because she's chosen to identify with words that are often associated with scammers. She and I, in our conversation together, also talked about interview styles and call styles. And I ended up stopping my calls because I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, because I didn't want to be a coach and I didn't like the way it made the brand look. And also I just wanted to make content. So Britt and I have also talked about this, how like, I want to build community too, but I don't want to make a cult. I would love to help people one-on-one, but like, I don't want to be called a coach. And so like, it's not that all coaches are scammers or all people who sell courses are scammers. It's that the scammers use this to scam. And so even if you're genuine, which I'd like to think Britt Hartley is, it's hard to separate yourself from those bubbles. So just listen to Matt's genuine concern, and then we'll talk about Britt's response.
But if you're served up some nonsense, but somebody manages to convince you that if you just work hard enough, like they did, you will be able to understand it. And it is very, very, very important for you to understand this. And they'll be happy to help you and even certify your success for $5,000 or $4,000 or $19,000 or whatever it is. It feels like it's not nonsense. It's playing on your fear of missing out. They have found the secret. I should be able to find it too, when there's no demonstration that they've found any secret at all. Like, genuinely, I keep asking these people to offer any defense, any definition that they would like to defend, any demonstration that they actually understand the subject they're promoting, that the subject makes sense. And the closest any of these have come to an honest defense is by saying something like, hey, I don't understand it either. We're all just searching here. I just know it's real, and I'm sorry you're not there yet.
And I am sure I sound like this to a lot of people who don't like my work, which is why I've tried to work really hard to explain it to people. But as I say that, just like with any topic, you do actually have to know what I'm saying, though, to discount it. So like usually when I see somebody online that I'm like, you're not making sense, I go, here's why you're not making sense. I think sometimes, especially as people, because like, look, my philosophical work is predicated on an understanding that our biological experience has obviously allowed us to have something we call a consciousness. And that consciousness allows us to see the world in a filtered way that allows me to perceive Matt Dillahunty's humanity, which then allows me to have empathy, which then allows me to feel a connection, which then allows me to feel like I care about Matt. Why should I care about Matt if I've never met Matt? Well, because on the foundation of everything I just said, care shines through. Now I care about Matt. He's a person and I'm a person. I care about Matt. And people might say, well, why? But why? What do you mean why? I just told you. And if they don't understand, so if you deconstruct it back and they go, well, I don't understand empathy. Well, now I have to explain empathy. They don't understand connection. Well, I have to explain connection. They don't understand the idea that I look at Matt and I see a person that deserves like dignity. They're like, well, why? He's a stranger. So, okay. They don't understand. So then I have to go back to ground zero. And then you might deal with people who are like, oh yeah, like I don't see that in people. When I see a human being, I don't see a person. Okay, well now we're having a different brain experience and your filter is different than my filter, but just because you don't understand what I'm saying doesn't mean I'm not saying something that's valid. So again, I think I have really good arguments for my levels, the work that I'm doing, the stuff that I'm working on, but you have to also engage with me in good faith and you have to explain to me where you're at. But I understand what Matt's saying because there are scammers and grifters that use the same exact language to say like, oh, once you're where I'm at, you'll get it. So I also understand that, but it is also true, but it is also wrong. Anything can be, I love you can be a scam. I love you can be a scam. We're not going to stop telling our parents or people we love, I love you, because some people use I love you to scam. You have to discern whether the I love you is a scam or if it's real. Just like with anything else, right?
They'll spin the language. It's non-religious spirituality. It's no-nonsense spirituality. It's secular spirituality. You can be a spiritual director. You can be a spiritual life coach. You can be a spiritual guru for only $19.99. Maybe it's a weaker version of Dumbo's magic feather. But they won't give you the feather, which would make the claim testable. That's the key thing about Dumbo's magic feather is that you didn't need the feather at all. And the appeal of, oh, the power was within you all the time. That's a great, powerful message. Doesn't mean it's a great, good quality message, but it's a powerful one because it is specifically empowering people. And if this was a version of Dumbo's magic feather and they're not giving you a feather, they're also not able to demonstrate that you can fly. They're just willing to tell you that they're confident that you can eventually fly, and so can they. And they'll give you a certificate that shows that you've taken their course where you learned their unproven method for trying to learn how to fly. So in response, not only do I challenge every single non-religious spiritual person, and yeah, if you're a religious spiritual person, you're challenged too, but I'm more irritated by the people who are doing it in the pretense of, ooh, this is non-religious. It's you don't have to be religious and you can still pretend you understand something. I challenge them all to debate the merits and reality of the subject and methods that they claim are real. You can call into the shows. You can book a debate.
So he's basically saying, come talk to me, Britt Hartley, which I hope they do. But then his response to his chat is LOL. But now I understand his chat is full of Britt Hartley fans, which honestly kind of cringe, y'all. Kind of cringe, but whatever. And like, it is like, you're obviously talking about Britney. And it's like, why are you talking about Britney this way? Look, this is how you build a brand. This is how you get popular. You start beefing with content creators. I do think it's a little cringe, but I'll not, maybe that's why I'll always be a nobody. But like, also, you know what I mean? Like, I say that like a little, I am a somebody. I don't mean to be disparaging. I mean to say that I think it's a little funny, a little bit. Okay. Chat said, does coaching need a degree or license? So no, there's no body, though there is a coaching certification program some people can go through. Dr. Raquel Martin talked about this in regards to Dr. Cheyenne Bryant actually recently, if you guys want to check that out. But basically that's the issue, is a lot of people feel like there should be regulation for coaching. Look, I don't care. Make shit safe. That's all I care about. Make shit safe, figure it out. Don't be fascistic about it. I'm on board, right? I think the issue is that I don't know if he's going after Britney's education, because Brit has like a master's degree. And so because she got it when she was like, I think in her Mormon days, right? I can't remember her exact timeline, but I wonder if he's going after her education or something. I'm not sure, because Brit does use it to give herself credibility when making TikToks. And I'll transparently say, when I first came across Brit's TikTok, I banned it because I thought it was woo-woo. And then I saw her YouTube channel and I was like, oh, this woman is great. Let me go follow her on TikTok. And then I found out I had banned her, and I was like, because branding matters. Like Brit, I like her TikToks now better, but I didn't love her branding either initially. But that's just because my initial like patriarchal instinct came up. Like my boy brain automatically was like, ooh. And then I was like, wait, do you know what I'm saying? So I really like Britney's work. I think it's really good. And that's why I reached out for a collaboration, and I'm so glad she could do it. And I also think that it's hard to exactly communicate where you stand with people, because sometimes I will say like, oh yeah, like I'm spiritual, but only in a biological way. And people will be like, what does that mean? I think spirituality and consciousness come from that biological experience we're having. And that's why everything feels profound and connected, right? And then chat said, do you need to justify caring for people? I think you need to explain why you care for people, because I don't actually think as an animal species we naturally do. I think it is actually something that is taught and partially biological. But I think like caring and the standard in which we care is a taught phenomenon. That's why we're arguing against rape culture so hard, because rape culture is taught. And yes, it could be biological, of course, because everything's biological. But we obviously need to teach people to care about rape in order to change culture. So obviously we have data to indicate that human beings are naturally technically caring, though it really depends on how you have a relationship with human beings and connectiveness and caring about, people. Like I also experience a different biological experience, a different brain experience where I feel connected to everything and everyone always. And I kind of have to move it down to kind of regulate, because I am like, I can read a story about Stranger and cry about it and think about it for weeks, right? Like, and I know a lot of people are like that. I'm not alone in that. Lots of people do that. Lots of people feel deeply empathetic for people, right? I mean, I could do it for anyone though. Like you give me a person and I will find a way to cry for that person, because I will see the depth of their humanity. And I think that makes me a better person. And it also forces me to really focus on my values, because that part that's also happening, which I do think is like biological and intellectual, can also make you make excuses for bad people. So you have to be careful, right? Jess says, did you get in trouble for being too sensitive growing up? I mean, to this day, I think I don't get in trouble. I get dismissed, which is a version of trouble, but it's worse. It's a discounting of my intellect and intellectual ability because I am emoting. So it's a type of punishment, but it's a type of it's what I think Matt Dillahunty did sort of here, where Brit isn't even emoting that much, but the word spiritual is a type of emote, and that type of emote just really triggers people. It really makes people feel like dismiss. Okay, so let's get through Brit's video. I'm going to 1.2 it. It's actually kind of long. It's an hour. So let's watch. Oops.
Hi everyone, Britt here with No Nonsense Spirituality. This is going to be a new kind of video for me because I have received what I think is friendly fire from Matt Dillahunty, who most of you may know.
Good faith, good
and
faith.
He made a whole video referring to
Good
me
opening.
and also Jim Palmer, who runs the Center of Non-Religious Spirituality. He made a whole video called Spirituality is Nonsense and mentioned me in that video. So today I will be responding.
Well, I felt like he didn't actually mention her. I felt like, again, it's really weird how he said it because he didn't call her out. I watched the video this morning. He didn't call her out. He didn't say Britt Hartley, known in Son's spirituality. He kept saying things really like, oh, these people, spiritual is no nonsense. Spiritual is no nonsense. Like he didn't say, like if I was listening to him and I didn't know who Britt was, I wouldn't even know what he was saying. Like I wouldn't have thought he was talking about a person. And that's why I was like, why don't you just say, hey, I saw some TikToks recently that made me think about this topic. I'd really love to talk about it. But in no way am I talking about or meaning to call out people. You know what I'm saying? Like Matt's done this for so long, right? Chet said he said her exact title though, spiritual director. Maybe you're right. I do remember that stuff, but I just felt like when he was, I'm not saying he wasn't talking about Britt Hartley. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm saying why? Okay. It's interesting to watch adults escalate. That's what I'm saying. Whether he liked it or not, he was not responsible with how he made the video. And now Britt feels like he mentioned me versus if I felt like a YouTuber was talking about me and they didn't make it direct, I'd be like, okay, like, yeah, you're talking about me, but like, you know what I mean? So maybe I would talk about it, maybe I wouldn't. But again, I'm not upset about it. I'm just pointing out that I think it's funny that grown-ups are subtweeting or / not having the real, why aren't you just talking to her, Matt? Why didn't you just DM her?
To some critiques, and I'm curious to see what you guys think about this because many of you value Matt Dillahunty's work in the atheist space, specifically all the work that he has done debating theists of various religions. Now, some of his critiques I think are fair. Some of it I think is semantics. Some of it is going to be some fundamental differences between him and I. And some of the critiques I think are unfair. There's some of it that I think it was punching down a little bit. So I'm going to go over his arguments and steelman them as best I can and respond and see what you think at the end of this. And my purpose in doing this is not to convince Matt or any of you to use the word spirituality or to claim yourself as a spiritual person, but to prove that there is space for both of us and for what we do in the atheistic and secular communities. So this is a bit of like Hamilton and Aaron Burr. There was room in this world for Hamilton and me before we kind of start firing shots at each other here. So my first point that I want to address is the word spirituality, his qualms with it, how I define it, evidence to support it, and why I use that term instead of other words. So let's take a look at what he says here.
So what do I mean by nonsense? Well, if you go to a dictionary, it's one of the secondary definitions of nonsense are things of no importance or value. And definitely spirituality, so far, has no importance or value to me. And until someone clearly explains what it is, that it's real, and why it should be important to me, I don't see that changing. But that's a trivial objection. You're saying, oh, it's nonsense because I don't care about it. That's not an objection, and that's not what I'm here saying. I'm going with the more primary, the more prominent usage of nonsense. Words or language having no meaning or conveying no intelligible ideas. Language, conduct, or an idea that is absurd or contrary to good sense, and an instance of absurd action. And since we're talking about something that doesn't convey intelligible ideas, it's worth knowing that by intelligent, we're talking about something that is capable of being understood or comprehended.
So his first claim is that this word is too vague.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I was trying to figure out if she times 2'd it on her own phone. It looks like she did. That's interesting.
To be of any use or meaning. And because it's so vague, it just invites charlatans into this space. And honestly, this is a fair frustration. The word spirituality is used badly all the time. It gets used to mean ghosts and vibes and manifestation and crystals and energy and intuition and psychedelics and just having emotions. So if Matt's argument is that the word is often vague, I agree. But vague usage does not mean that there's no real subject matter to contend with. There are many words that we use in the English language that are too broad to define. Words like love, for example, are very difficult to define, certainly difficult to put into a beaker.
Exactly.
But with love, even though it's used in a variety of ways, we can still ground that in the human experience. We can talk about how humans feel and act with love. We can even look at brain scans when we're talking about being in love. We can have objective conversations about subjective realities. We can do brain scans of monks who are doing loving kindness meditations and see that their user default mode in their brain, that part of their brain that is self-obsessed, is really quiet during that meditation, for example. And I want to do the same thing with spirituality, that there's an element of spirituality that we can ground in the human experience, even if it's true that that term is sometimes used in vague woo-woo ways that I wouldn't support. So then Matt goes on to give a definition from the dictionary on spirituality.
Relates to the human search for meaning, purpose, and connection to the sacred, transcendent, or inner self, often independent of organized religions.
So let's work with this definition that he gave, because I don't want to make a Jordan Peterson move here and start just making up definitions. He said spirituality relates to the human search for meaning, purpose, and connection to the sacred, transcendent, or inner self, often independent of organized religion. So fine, if that's the definition, then the question becomes whether meaning, purpose, a sense of sacredness, even just as an experience or transcendence, or a curiosity with your inner life, can be understood. Can we do all of that without supernaturalism? And the answer is yes. There was nothing in that definition that defined connection to the self or connection outside of self as something that requires the supernatural. In fact, it says it's often independent of organized religion. So then you can say, okay, give me data and evidence that this thing that we're pointing to exists and that it's something that we should contend with. Happy to do so. Because for me, just so Matt knows, I'm not sure how familiar he actually is with my work versus just the title of my platform. So just so you know, Matt, I don't believe in God. I'm an outspoken atheist. I don't believe in the soul. I don't believe in a spiritual realm. I don't believe in manifestation. I don't believe in the self. I think the self is an illusion. I don't believe in free will. This, for me, when I talk about spirituality, is all grounded in human experience. But let's talk about evidence for this definition that you gave so we can try to ground it a bit. So first, you say that spirituality is related to the human search for meaning, and our brains are meaning makers. That's what they do. We do not simply receive raw reality. We interpret it. We organize it. Our brain filters reality without us even intending to. So you say that you see no evidence that the universe has any intrinsic meaning. I'm a nihilist. I agree with you. I don't think that the universe has any intrinsic meaning. But the definition that you gave did not specify that meaning has to come from the universe. And so when I say meaning matters, I do not mean that the universe has a secret mission statement written into the stars or that there's a supernatural realm that we can be accessing. I mean that humans are the kind of animal that psychologically needs some kind of coherent relationship to reality in order to function. Our brains like to know what matters, what pain means, what we're responsible for, what we can let go of, what kind of...
Yeah, Chad says she's spiritual but doesn't believe in the spirit. Okay. Yeah, I'm spiritual and I don't believe in the spirit. Also, I used to say BDSM was spiritual for me. People would be so confused by that. Spirituality just to me means a profound present experience with thing. That's when I feel spiritual, when I'm having a profound experience, right? So that profound experience makes me feel the most alive. I'm in the most present. I am the most aware of myself. Because a lot of the time we are kind of on autopilot because, you know, when you're driving to work, when you're doing chores, when you're getting through your day, like you're not existing in the most present, obviously, because when you exist in the world, like if everybody was existing in the most present, the world couldn't look this way. Because when you're existing in the most present, like when you're very aware that you exist, it's a very different experience than being like, factually, yes, of course I'm alive. No. Do you know that you're alive? That's why people think like, oh, you sound so crazy. Like, oh, you're so, you know, but it's because you're denying it. Like we live in a world where men can't even like cry or feel good about their own feelings. Now imagine they feel their feelings for the first time at 45. They're going to have a profound experience that's going to feel spiritual. And that experience might make them think like, oh, maybe I should join a church or maybe I should do this. You should acknowledge that you can feel that way by just acknowledging you exist in the most profound, like present way. So, you know, what we're experiencing is, you know, it was like when I was in church as a kid and that feeling of the Holy Spirit came over me and then I recreated it in a secular space. And I was like, oh, it wasn't in the church. It didn't exist in the church. It existed in my experience with the thing. So I could recreate it through sex. Have you ever had sex that's felt spiritual? You know what I'm saying? That's why I know the difference between when I have drugs and I don't get that spiritual experience and when I do have drugs and I have it. Because again, it's like when I meditate and have a spiritual experience versus when I meditate and I don't. When I have a thought that's a spiritual experience versus when I don't have a thought that's a spiritual experience. Most of my thoughts are not spiritual experiences because I'm not having a profound realization with self. I'm not like, oh my God, you know, but like sometimes, you know, again, spiritual is just this word that we're using. And the problem is like people feel that feeling and instead of identifying it and deconstructing it and putting it in its category, they assume it's magic. They assume it's Jesus. They assume it's something outside of ourselves. No, it's you. It's your brain doing it. Because the spiritual experience couldn't have happened without your brain. So if you die, the spiritual experience goes away. The spiritual experience exists in your brain. It happened to you. That, you know, and then sometimes you can have shared spiritual experiences because both of your brains are chemically at the same time and going doom, 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 doom. You know, it's like a vibe. It's like when you make love and you're really in sync with it. right?
Life we're trying to build, it needs a way to orient. And we have evidence that this matters. In a 2017 systemic review and meta-analysis found that meaning in life associated with far better physical health outcomes.
True. Chet says you can masturbate and feel spiritual. I can't tell you how many times I have said to my partner, like, bro, that was a spiritual experience. Like, you should have been there. I really just had like a spiritual experience. And he's like, damn. And I'm like, yeah, you can definitely feel like you were like elevating, or you can feel like, it's just another thing to do because you got to biologically get it over with. Yep. You know?
It doesn't mean that having meaning in your life means that you'll never be sick, but it does give you a lot more resilience. It means that there is a measurable relationship between having meaning in your life, being able to define the meaning of your life, and doing better across health-related matters. You don't have to, none of that has to be contained within the supernatural. All of that can be built from the ground up. Another large study of almost 7,000 US adults over age 50 found that stronger purpose of life was associated with lower all-cause mortality. Again, that doesn't mean that purpose is just a magic vitamin, but it does mean that purpose is not just some fluffy, poetic extra. It is connected to how humans function.
And if it wasn't, then y'all wouldn't have midlife crises at 45 because you followed the script. You wouldn't feel a need to rebel against your parents. Obviously, you need a purpose. You have a sense of purpose. You wouldn't be making this YouTube channel for the last 30 years doing what you were doing in your field if you didn't feel like a sense of purpose, right? It's like, sometimes I think atheists try so hard to be facts and logic that they absolutely miss what we are as a species. Like, you're completely discounting our biological experience and what a profound experience it is to be alive and feel our bodies and to process our thoughts and to exist in our, it's like you're trying so hard to deny the fact that it's almost like they're embarrassed to admit that they're moved and inspired by their own work. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like they're ashamed to think of themselves as artists because, like, oh, I'm a scientist. Like, I don't believe it. It's like when even Jordan Peterson, the problem with Jordan Peterson is he goes too hard into the feelings. Ironically enough, he's too hard in his feelings. So everything feels like an overwhelming experience for him. He's like, oh, the tears on my face, the skin on my body, the colors of my suit. Like, all of it is too much. And I'm like, girl, you need balance, which is why when he debated Matt Dillahunty, I was very much in Matt's corner because Jordan made everything feel too exaggerated. And that also annoys me when people try to make things bigger than they are. Like, you're making it too big and it's not that big. But also on the other side of it, not making things big enough. Balance, balance, balance.
And cope and behave and even survive. So if Matt's critique is there is no cosmic meaning, there's no intrinsic cosmic meaning, I agree. But if the critique is therefore meaning is nonsense, or therefore meaning building or meaning seeking is nonsense, then
hold on. Chat said she said both love and spirituality are subjective, but spirituality is often radically different than love because it's far more vague and refers to God, meditation, astrology, and crystals. Spirituality is too loaded and too filled with nonsense. No, we already gave the definition for spirituality that we were working off of. It doesn't necessarily. Hold on. A quick definition of spirituality. Spirituality is a broad, subjective human experience focused on finding meaning, purpose, and a sense of connection to something larger than oneself. Often distinct from organized religion, it involves exploring deep inner dimensions, personal growth, and connecting with a higher power or nature. Right, but like the higher power is in quotation, so it's subjective, meaning it doesn't have to be tangible. Right? Higher power, it doesn't have to be tangible. It could just be the acknowledgement that, like, without your parents fucking, you wouldn't be here. That could be a spiritual practice of, like, oh my God, right? Like, having the realization that, like, holy shit, if my parents didn't fuck on that day, on that hour, on that second, if my dad didn't jizz at it exactly the second he jizzed, and maybe like my sperm didn't race, do the race, then you know what I'm saying? It's like, whoa, like that's kind of profound. I can have a spiritual experience being like, whoa, I'm the sperm who made it, bro. You know what I mean? So higher power, God, in terms of spiritualism, doesn't have to interact with something outside of yourself. But when we say outside of yourself, we also mean like the community, right? That's why collectivism is really hard. That's why class consciousness is so hard, because it requires you to think of something outside of yourself. Okay? You actually have to think about other people. You could argue empathy is spirituality. You know what I mean? So, Chet says, I don't believe in a higher power, but I think maybe that's a bubble or terminology issue. Yeah, I don't believe in a higher power either. But I do think the world doesn't revolve around me. So there's something other than myself that exists. That's how I look at it. I cannot center the universe on myself. Like, what the fuck is that? You know what I mean? It's just as narcissistic as thinking your God is the only one. Like, the universe exists whether I exist or not. And that's pretty profound. And then that could feel like something bigger than yourself. The something bigger than yourself could be your community. You know, just the fact that like, it's not just about you. That's how I think about it, right? So love is very subjective. Guys, people rape their children and say they love them. People literally like, and I think they might in a weird way, in a weird biological animal way. But the fact is like, what good is love at that point? You know, what good is your spirituality if it puts me in a teal swan cult? What good is your love? Love isn't inherently necessarily a positive experience. Spirituality doesn't have to be a positive experience. Ideally, they would be. But I think human beings have shown time and time again that apparently not. You know, I wish there was a word that only meant positive experience, but that doesn't seem to be how we're using it or interact with it. So it's subjective, it's up to debate, it's a construct, you know, so on and so forth.
And that's a leap that I don't follow. Secular spirituality does not have to claim that meaning comes from God or the universe or the soul or a supernatural realm.
Exactly.
It can say something much more modest and much more evidence-based, that humans need meaning structures, that humans suffer when those meaning structures collapse, that humans can rebuild meaning without lying to themselves.
Yep.
And some practices, some communities, some rituals, some philosophies, and some forms of inner work help people do that better than others. That is not nonsense. That is the work of being human after certainty dies and after religious frameworks fail. And that is also a place where when we talk about the meaning crisis, that it seems that humans are needing some help with, that it's not something that they always just know intuitively how to do.
Exactly.
Now, Matt will say here that this is just psychology and not spirituality, but just give me a chance here to lay all this out. Just hold on to that thought, I beg you. So under the umbrella term of spirituality is not just developing meaning, but also connection. And yes, we have data on human ability to feel subjectively a feeling of connectedness to something outside of yourself that has real impact on human experience and real impact on behavior. If someone invites you to an experience that evokes awe, it is not just hyperbole. Matt says in this video that,
oh, you know what one of my favorite spiritual experiences is? When you meet a girl in the bathroom and you both compliment each other's clothing, and then you share lipstick recommendations, and then you hug each other after. Truly spiritual. Truly.
this word transcendence is just a hyperbole for neat. But awe is a real area of psychological research. Researchers usually define awe as an emotion we experience when we encounter something vast that challenges our current mental frame.
Now, and chat said like nature just seeing a giant mountain. Now, this is what's important is I don't think Matt Dillahunty is having that experience versus I am. Example, I have a sibling, and when they came to visit us, I was like, look at our view. And I was like, sometimes it just makes me cry. And my sibling was like, I don't know, it's nice, I guess. And I was like, and that's, you know, that's the difference right there. Is like when I see it, I'm like, oh my God. And when they see it, they're like, oh yeah, cool, mountains, water, nice. And I'm like, and that's it. That's the different kinds of brains. I'm the kind of brain that can see like an ant following another ant, and I'm like, whoa. And other people see it and they go squash, 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 squash. Okay? And I get it. You know, sometimes I see a spider and I'm like, kill it, you know? But like everyone's different and how they're having that. But I think it's layered for all of us. So again, it's fine if you don't have that experience, but if you're not having that experience, yeah, you're really going to wonder what the heck everyone else is talking about.
That can be physical vastness, like looking out at the night sky. It can be conceptual vastness, like when you're trying to study deep time or evolution. It can be moral vastness, like watching someone do something courageous or compassionate. It can be aesthetic vastness.
And
like
when I say like my worry is that they're not feeling enough feelings, the only time I ever feel like I'm equal or similar to like the boy way of thinking in relation to all of this is when I completely become like devoid of emotions, like almost psychopathic. Not literally, that's a hyperbole, but you know, I'm logic and facts, you know, logic and facts. Yeah, but it makes you like a bad person. Like it actually makes you like a bad fucking person because now you're like, oh, they're not people, they're numbers on a chart. Like you're like actually becoming a bad person instead of actually engaging with my empathy and thinking about what if that was my child? What if that was my father? What if that was my loved one? What if every person's family is just as valuable as my family? You know what I mean? Like, it's very deeply, like, when I think about people bringing a kid into the universe, I'm like, you are making the biggest fucking decision you will ever make to force a human being into existence. Like, please be so responsible with it. And everyone's like, bro, we're just gonna fuck without a condom. And I'm like, okay. Because, like, to me, again, it's this whole conversation of, like, we're all having different experiences, obviously, otherwise the world couldn't be this way. But I'm saying if you have the profound realization that you are bringing a baby into the universe, it should feel spiritual. You are bringing a whole ass human being into literal existence and you are doing it so casually. That's crazy. But there you are. That's all of humanity always, right?
Music and art and architecture. And the important thing is that awe does something to the self. A major 2015 study shows that awe tends to create what researchers call the small self. That doesn't mean self-hatred. It just means that the, illusion of the self or the ego in the brain or the default mode network becomes less central. People feel less like the main character of the universe and more part of a larger whole. And we have this across several studies that awe is associated with pro-social behavior, more generosity, more ethical decision making, and a greater willingness to help others. That is why we can look at the brains of Buddhist meditators and see that they're less neurotic, they're less self-obsessed, they're more happy.
Yeah, I think chat says, I guess this is what makes the conversation so difficult because we're all using different words from a material experience. Well, I think the dilemma is it's like that with everything. This conversation should be no harder than any conversation you've ever had ever. The question is, can we eventually agree on language in order to have a more profound conversation, right? So I think that's the issue, right? This chat says secular spirituality. What does it even mean, and why only men don't understand and all women do? Why atheist men don't understand secular spirituality? Why? See how you put your own spin on my title? You see that? Like, I didn't say that. You know what I mean? I didn't say all women understand it. You know what I'm saying? That's what's so funny. Like, bro. So, okay, none of these all conversations will be like this forever. The point is, I do think Matt is having, in good faith, a completely different biological experience to Brit because he is not engaging, right? He is not engaging. It's also why hedonists are negatively embracing sort of like this awe experience on a constant basis, so they don't actually have a profound awe with it anymore. And this is why I say be very careful when you're chasing awe and wonder, because what you're chasing is this profound relationship with existence that feels spiritual. But if you use and abuse it, like love, like anything else, like true connection, you won't feel satisfied. Everything in balance, everything with respect and dignity, everything with some understanding that you are having a true grounding experience rather than a performance to talk about later or at something to brag about. Like, Jesus spoke to me in my dreams. It's like, okay, relax, So, be very careful. Ew. Oh, sorry. Discord wrote something.
Be more generous than other brains. We have a study where you're doing some kind of worksheet, but you're guided into a feeling of awe while looking at some beautiful landscape, and the instructor will drop their pencils, and people are more likely to help you pick it up than if you were doing the same worksheet just staring at a concrete wall. We have studies that show that if you that you will draw yourself.
But in order to have these experiences, just to be clear, you have to be open to them. It's like going to therapy. It's not going to work if you're not open to it. Philosophy is not going to work unless you're open to it. Spirituality is not going to work unless you're open to it. But don't be so open your brain falls out. So don't, come back and talk to me about trees talking to you. You know what I'm saying? You are not seeing a ghost. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you really saw ghosts, I better now know about it. I always tell you guys this, and I'll tell it for new people again. If I ever get magical superpowers, I'm not telling a fucking soul. Because it'd be crazy. It'd be crazy to come on the internet and say I have magic. And if you really have magic, you would never say it. Because it would make no sense to tell a world that is so crazy that you have magic. So that's how I know you don't have magic.
Bigger on a piece of paper if you don't experience awe than if you do. You'll literally draw a picture of yourself smaller after you spend some time looking at the night sky. It changes how you interact with the world. You're more likely to let go of grudges. We even have some evolutionary reasons for this, where it helps the bonds of a tribe to have these moments that allow us to break out of our usual self-obsessed, resentful way of thinking, resentful way of interacting with each other. There's also research showing that awe can change your relationship to time. A 2012 study showed that people who experienced awe felt like they had more available time. They were less impatient. They were more willing to volunteer their time. They preferred experiences over material products. They had greater life satisfaction. And again, none of this requires supernaturalism. We also have brain research here that in 2019,
okay, chat says, because spirituality is so associated by and used by charlatans, astrologers, and woo-woo people, and men can see right through that bullshit. Really? But they can't see through their own? Men are 90% responsible for all murders and violent crimes. So you can see past astrology's bullshit, but you can't see past your own? Cool. Got it. You guys are so logical. Come on, guys. Think before you type. Think before you type, okay? Think before you type. Also, guys, tomorrow's my birthday stream, and we'll be having my friend to come on to talk about my astrology chart, my birth chart. So for funsies, if you guys astrology girlies, great, because both of us are like, she knows more about it than I do, but we don't even know that much about it. You know what I mean? But like, we're going to have fun with it. So we're going to do that tomorrow for my birthday.
An fMRI study found that awe-inducing videos reduced activity in parts of the default mode network that is associated with our self-referential thinking and our mind wandering and the narrative self. So I wouldn't say that like awe turns off the ego in some sloppy guru way, but I can say that there's neuroscience suggesting that awe may reduce certain forms of self-focused processing, which lines up with the behavioral research that people feel smaller, feel more connected, feel less trapped in their usual, self-talk loops. And so awe is not just, wow, that's neat. Awe moves people from me to we. This is why religions have always...
And by the way, spirituality is a modern change. That's why Brit's brand is new. It's called no nonsense spirituality. Because this chatter also said, get 100 people who identify as spiritual, and I bet they are more likely to believe in demons, psychics, ghosts, angels, and astronomy. Okay. Talk to 9 out of 10 guys and they'll tell you they're anti-rape, but they've absolutely sexually assaulted somebody, I bet. And some variation that they would even consider sexual assault, but here we are. Because they don't consider touching someone's hand without consent assault, but it is in some places. Spitting on someone is considered assault. You're doing this thing where you're not getting it. Brit is literally the new wave of saying spirituality is science-based. She's giving you science-based right now evidence. Are you up to speed on stream? Are you listening to Brit? She's giving you neuroscience. She's giving you data. She's giving you studies. We are biological creatures. Everything we experience is in our heads. That's why religion feels as real as it is, because it's happening in our heads. And it's not that it's not real. Religion is real. God is not. Religions are institutions created by people. They're real. God is not real. We have no evidence for God. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. You have to be very careful about the language we're using if you are even understanding what's being said. Okay? You said, then what is your explanation for why women tend to gravitate towards astrology and tarot cards? Because it's less patriarchal. Because it's more accepting. It's no violence. There's no killing, no death, there's no rape, there's no man telling them they're second class because they were born female. It's because it's literally more accepting. That's it. It's literally more fun. It's non-judgmental. That's it. It's not about being smart. It's about being happy. That's it. That's why people like it. It's just fun. It's nice. It's relaxing. You know what I mean? That's what it is. So yes, the point is that you're fighting so hard against every spiritual person that, like Matt Dillahunty, you're also attacking Brit, even though you're saying, yeah, Brit seems to be extremely rare, but that's the point. So is a man who doesn't rape. So are men who don't commit violence. That's not to say we should not move society in a direction where they stop doing those things. Do you know what I'm saying? And by the way, I'm not even talking about literally all men rape. I'm saying the fact is when a man rapes somebody, other men don't care. Trump is president. Don't remember, the same men who do nothing about men who rape are contributing to rape statistics because you're not turning in your buddies. You're not ending friendships. You're not going to end. That's the problem. Okay. So yes, we're at the beginning stages of attempting to move the world truly in a different direction. Either join us or don't join us, but like we all contribute to the way the world is. And instead of thinking, oh, there's another way to be spiritual, you're like, no, all ways to be spiritual are bad. Or there's just a new way to be spiritual. There's another way to do it. There's another way to exist. There's another way to have babies. There's another solution. There's another way to feed people. There's another way to like build a healthy country, right?
Is used awe and cathedrals and chanting and incense and stained glass and pilgrimage and mountains and silence and music. All of this works because humans are awe-responsive animals.
Chet said, why is she talking like every man has a great best friend? You absolutely do. Right now, you have known somebody or have somebody in your life who's a rapist. You absolutely do. Which one is it? Is the question. You absolutely do.
Religion didn't invent awe, it just organized it. Awe is an emotional state with measurable effects. And if I say just go experience beauty, people hear self-care. If I say go outside, people hear wellness. If I say look at the stars, people hear just like, oh, what a nice experience. But if I say you need contact with awe because your ticker tape of self-obsessed neuroticism is suffocating you, now we're actually getting closer to what humans have traditionally meant by having a spiritual experience. And we can talk about the science of ritual too. I'll be more brief here as I think you're getting my point. Rituals are not evidence that the supernatural is real. Rituals are evidence
Exactly, chat. Spirituality is such an open concept. We should get rid of it. So is art, science, politics, friendship, and love. Literally, girls. Exactly.
that humans are embodied social symbolic animals. Rituals scientifically help us mark values, process emotions, process grief, increase pleasure, and decrease pain. The example that I always give is two groups of people. They're both promised that both groups are promised that one person is going to win $300. One person actually does, and they walk out. And then one group of people does nothing, and they stew over it the rest of the day. And they're stuck in their emotions about it, and they're upset about it the rest of the day that they didn't get the $300. The other group does a made up ritual, just completely made up. They write about it, they put some salt on it, they crumple it up, they throw it over their left shoulder. And when asked about it later, they've completely forgotten the experience. Like they've processed it out of their bodies. So even when rituals are made up, they help us process emotions out of our body. And we have neuroscience suggesting that rituals can affect the way that we respond even to failure. We have a 2015 study showing that colleagues found that ritualized behavior reduces the neural response to moral failure. So when I mean ritual, I don't mean things that you do in order to get into heaven. I mean, lighting a candle before writing can tell your body, okay, now we're beginning this activity. Or a funeral can tell your body, this person is gone, but this is how we grieve together. A graduation can tell a young person you're crossing a threshold. A weekly family dinner.
Holy shit, chat. Chat says I never said that, but we should get rid of astrology, tarot cards, and psychics because they're causing harm. Habibi, lock in, please. You sound like the people are like, we should get rid of porn because it's causing harm. We should get rid of drugs. They're causing harm. Oh my God, it's what you do with the thing. Astrology is fun. Psychics can be fun. All these things can literally be harmless if you use them in that way. You're being so like conservative right now. Like, please check yourself and think about what you're saying. You're going to get rid of drugs too? Get rid of sex and BDSM and fucking pride parades? You're going to get rid of everything fun? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you trying to get rid of everything fun? It's just what an insane thing to say. Come on, lock in.
Can tell children this is who we are. A morning walk can tell your nervous system, I'm still participating in the world. These are rituals. And one of the strongest areas of research is ritual and social bonding. A lot of religious rituals involve.
Yeah, let's get rid of cars because they cause problems too. And cell phones. You know what? Let's just get rid of people. Guys, new plan. Let's get rid of everybody. That would really help. Come on, be serious.
People moving and chanting, singing, kneeling, standing, clapping, and breathing together. And there's research showing that our brains like this. And there's research showing that this synchronous movement increases cooperation and social attachment. You yourself, Matt, found yourself singing together with people. And that's not proof that the words are doctrine just because you had a feeling, but you did have a feeling with this ritual that you had on Sundays. Now, again, you may just call this psychology, but hold on, just hold on. Let me cook. Next in your definition, you also include inner work and the connection to the self. Now, I agree with you here that there's no evidence of a soul. You speak of this as just personality. Fine. But there's a whole universe within you of things to explore and better and worse ways to do that. There are tools that help with meeting the part of you that you're most ashamed of. That's called shadow work. For example, it helped me improve my relationship with myself and reduce shame when I did shadow work around my postpartum rage with the violent, intrusive thoughts that I was ashamed of that showed up when I was the mother of young children. We have tools to help you determine your core values, your motivations. If you come from religion, especially if you're a woman and a queer person, you may not know anything about who you are. You may need some help with things like determining what your core values are or what motivates you or what kind of personality that you have. You have existential fears. As you know from terror management theory, so much of what we do is driven by our deep unconscious fear of death. But we have other existential fears too that drive us. Existential loneliness, moral injury.
Hold on, chat. Hold on. You said, but we should get rid of astrology. And then you said, I didn't say we should ban them. Habibi, that translates to the same thing, right? You also said they're directing people away from therapy. Do both. I'm not even an astrology girly, but I still have a deck of cards. I'm not even, a tarot card. I'm not even a tarot girly and I have the cards. I'm not even an astrology girly. We're going to do an astrology stream tomorrow. It's like, it's not the thing. It's people. You're doing the same thing. I'm saying, think about, you know what I mean? Think about what you're saying. You said they can be harmful. I'm not saying ban them. I never said that. But you literally, baby, like when you use these, Habibi, when you use these words, when you say get rid of something, you're saying ban them. And I'm saying use the language you want to say. I wish people could get past thinking these things are literally true and use them for tools that better their lives. Like, you sound like my mother who thinks yoga, because it's a spiritual practice in other places, is like opening a door to a demon. It's just yoga. It is a spiritual practice. And in the West, it's exercise. But you know what I mean? It could be both. But yoga doesn't become evil because it's spiritual. You know? You said people spend tens of thousands of dollars speaking life advice from astrologers. Yeah, but they also do that to for therapy. You said instead of going to therapy, I'm going to stop engaging with you because you're not fucking thinking right now. And I don't know what's wrong, and I don't know what happened, and I don't know what your logic is, but you can say this about anything. Generally, people are struggling to go to therapy that works for them. Generally, having a ritualistic practice is helpful for people. Generally, and again, I don't know why you're focused on the scammer or why you're focused on the thing instead of the scammer, but like, you should be anti-scammers, not anti-astrology. If people want to engage in fun stuff, let them engage. I don't think we should ban religion or get rid of religion. I think you need to acknowledge what religion does and how it has a role in your life, right? Okay.
Fear of freedom, fear of meaninglessness. And there are better and worse tools to explore these inner spaces. Even if you don't believe in free will, which I don't, I think there's value in the journey of exploring more and more of the inputs of the system that create the outputs of the behavior that I do in my life. Now, my guess here is that you don't have a lot of objection to the science that I'm bringing up, but you would just call this philosophy, psychology, sociology, etc. And let me go then to your objection to why I would use any of that under the umbrella term of spirituality when I'm doing this from a completely secular point of view. So one reason is that when you put all of this together, the meaning, the purpose, the rituals, the exploration of connecting outside of you and also connecting inside of you, when you put all of that together, we don't have a secular word that means everything under this umbrella. Meaning, purpose, awe, states of transcendence that we can see in the brain and in human behavior, cultivating wisdom because it's hard to be a human, ritual, rites of passage that are good for the brain, connection, the ways that you feel connected to something bigger than yourself, even if it's just nature or the human story. We have the whole world of inner work and meditation, existential fears, motivations, thought work, learning about...
Okay, look, I understand people are here who never watch me, and I see that especially men in the audience are really struggling today. I need you all to mind your business today or lock in. This is a 70% female viewership, okay? This is a trans queer space. This is a progressive leftist space. If this topic is triggering for you in any capacity, it's okay to walk away. But see how when you talk about women's issues or spirituality or when women are questioned, you all have a fucking panic attack on us? Relax, okay? Listen to what I'm saying. Okay, so for this guy who says, like, why is she saying that every man has a friend who's a rapist? I only have 3 friends. Habibi, if you have no friends, you probably still know a rapist. I assume you get out of the house. Okay, don't be mad because I said one of your friends might be a rapist. I assumed you had more than 3 friends, God forbid. I'm sorry that I thought you were socially, Okay, look, if you have no friends, you maybe don't know a rapist, or maybe you're the rapist. I don't know. But statistically, many rapists exist amongst us, and you're going to, if you know anybody, know somebody who's raped. You're overthinking it. You're being too literal. You need to engage in the topic, okay? Statistically, you will know somebody in your lifetime who has raped somebody. You will be friends with them. You will go to school with them. You might even love them. You might even marry them, okay? That's it. That's all that I was saying. Relax. And if you keep yelling at my chat, I'll ban you. Okay? And that's it. That's your warning. Be careful how you chat moving forward. I permanently ban people and I do not unban, and I don't even care if you're a member.
Different aspects of the human psyche and how they show up with you, working with aspects of yourself towards growth and development. We have science behind all of these things. These are things that are good for you. These are the markers of human thriving and human well-being and human development. And we don't have a word that means everything that we did under the umbrella of spirituality. The meaning, purpose, ritual, community, narratives, heroes, inner work, awe, etc. We don't have a word that means all of that for secularism. We can kind of get there with well-being, but again, that's just going to be another vague term. So like you're just replacing one vague term.
Okay, so that right, they go, wow, she really put me down for having 3 friends. That's my friends. It's toxicity right there. Okay, I'm going to ban you because you're not listening. Okay, I literally made a little joke at the end because I actually don't want to make fun of people who struggle to have friends. But also, if you're an adult and you don't have friends, you actually do have something wrong with you. So you need to go to therapy and you need to do philosophical work and you need to do spiritual work. Okay? Because be so serious, banned, okay? Be so serious. This is why we can never have good conversations, because you guys are so fucking unserious, okay? You're so unserious. Chat says astrology does trigger me because I hate it. Well, that's your first problem. You're too attached. It's pseudoscience, it's predatory, and it's not inherently predatory. You're doing this thing that's weird. From conspiracy theories and flat out earth, I regret getting rid of, though. I'm just sick of it. Habibi, you're attacking. Do you even know anything about astrology outside of America or the US or the Americas? Do you know anything about astrology in a global sense? Do you understand you are attacking billions of people right now? Do you know what I'm saying? You know how anti-patriarchy I am, and I still I'm not anti-religious because I think being anti-religious is short-sighted. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you understand that you're impacting billions of people's beliefs right now? It just doesn't make sense. So you need to really think about who you're talking about and who you're actually mad at. That's what you need to think about.
Term with another. So we can talk about the science of well-being, but I don't think it goes far enough into the tools, all the tools that we have under the umbrella of this term spirituality. So my first rebuttal is we don't have secular language for this space that means everything that has been under the term spirituality. Even Sam Harris, who is an atheist, who is not exactly known for being soft on religion, who has, I think, debated with you, like on your team, uses the word spirituality for this reason.
He does.
He says there isn't another
See, even Sam Harris, and we don't like him. Oops.
Good word for the domain of disciplined practices and experiences that transforms human experience and connects that transformation to ethics. So he tried for hours to use a different word and found that there wasn't a good one. Would you really call Sam Harris a scam artist or not an atheist because he uses that word for all the things that I was just talking about? Sam Harris has probably brought more people to secularism than anyone else. Does he not deserve to be on the team because he also couldn't find a better word? Many atheists you admire, for example, Carl Sagan, used the word spirituality. He said, and I quote, "Science is not only compatible with spirituality, it's a profound source of spirituality."
Boom.
And Carl Sagan goes on to say,
boom, Brittany, mic drop.
Despite usage to the contrary, there's no necessary implication in the word spiritual that we are talking about anything other than matter or anything outside the realm of science. Carl Sagan's daughter wrote a wonderful book as a secular person, raised secular, on the science of ritual and its value.
Yeah, I agree. Chess as astrology is similar to Myers-Briggs in my mind. And I know people that hate Myers-Briggs. Like, they freak out over Myers-Briggs because some people get obsessed with it. Girlies, you can't decide if you hate something because the most extreme group of people are associated with it. Yeah, there's a whole group of people that base their whole personality on Myers-Briggs, and there's some of us who just think it's fun. Okay, listen, I do not care about Myers-Briggs. Like, I do not care about it at all, and yet I love taking the test. But like, sure, like, okay, but also like if they have a special interest in it, whatever, it's just fun. I feel like that's the problem we're always in, is like the people who are like, I always have fun with it, and people will come to me and be very serious about the thing I'm having fun with. And then they do make it unfun for me. But that's the thing, is like, I'm glad you take it seriously or whatever, but like, leave me out of your seriousness of it. Okay? Because I'm not interested. And this is also overlaps with my work because I do think the level sounds really spiritual to people. But yeah, there's a spiritual element to having the realization that the world doesn't revolve around you and what you hate. See, chatter? You're like, I hate astrology. I want to get rid of it or whatever. Or you regretted saying I get rid of it. You're like, I hate it. The world doesn't revolve around you, Habibi. I don't care if you hate it. Okay? You have to make a larger argument for it. You have to make a better argument for why you are so upset by it, right? So again, yeah, so that's going to sound really, like, the levels are going to sound spiritual if we talk about having a deeper relationship with self, if people don't even know that you shouldn't be hating anything anyways. You know, so that's the dilemma here.
For secular families in building family culture so that Gen Z is getting all the benefits of order and structure and identity and ritual and belonging and all of that for families. So I'm not inventing new usage for this term. Many atheists, begrudgingly, myself included, find that there's not a secular word that means everything that we want it to mean. So that's my first rebuttal. My second argument is that not including spirituality in the secularism space does secularism a disservice. If we give religion exclusive ownership over words like spiritual, sacred, ritual, transcendence, awe, meditation, confession, pilgrimage, moral formation, then religion wins a territory that it never should have owned. And this is where Alain de Botton's work is useful in Religion for Atheists. He says we shouldn't just mock religion, we should be stealing from it. We should be taking away its monopoly over this aspect of our lives, because religions are packed with ideas about how humans might live in arranged society. And so his own description of the book says that rather than mocking religions, atheists should steal from them while rejecting the supernatural claims. Again, another self-proclaimed atheist who will steal back these words in order that religion not have a monopoly on them. This is another quote from him. The challenge facing atheists is how to reverse the process of religious colonization, how to separate ideas and rituals from the religious institutions who have laid claim to them but don't truly own them. That's his quote. This is a religious inquisition in reverse. Religions steal things from wherever and integrates them into the religion. Part of the secular project that you and I are both committed to is committing to reversing that process. And that means we shouldn't allow religion to have the only language
Exactly.
for these kinds of human experiences that we have
Exactly.
solid science shows changes our behavior. And
This reminds me of that chatter when I made a video saying don't move in with your boyfriend because like you don't need to sign paperwork with a man you might break up with in 6 months. And people were like, "Oh, it's funny that Christians have been suggesting this for thousands of years." I'm like, not moving in with your boyfriend has nothing to do with Christians since the why is completely different. And they went back and forth with me in the comments. They're like, "Yeah, but Christians have already been suggesting this." No. This is different. This is absolutely different. And that's what's so frustrating is like sometimes I want to say something to you that I think is good advice. And then people go, "Oh, this group here has already been saying this." No, we're not saying the same thing. That's just like, there's a limit because of language, but we're not saying the same thing. So that's really frustrating for me. You know, it's frustrating for Bray. We're all frustrated, guys. We're still going to do something about it. So while you're busy being frustrated, we're going to be frustrated and we're going to do something about it. So I do appreciate Matt's attempt at good faith in his bubble. And yet, this is Britt really just making it clear about why he's wrong. And I hope he hears it because she's right. She's right. You know, because we have a lens because of the way we were raised in the world to see an avenue out of, right? The expectation of only engaging in reality as it relates to patriarchy and quote logic and facts and all these boy bubbles. I'm not saying that because she's a girl, I'm saying because she was raised as a girl. Do you see the difference? It's not because she's biologically or self-identified or performing as a girl. It's that the world decided Brit was a girl. And because the world decided Brit was a girl, they also treated her like a girl, whatever that means. And what that means is under patriarchy, she was always doubted, always second, always, frustrating to people. I'm sure when she deconstructed away from Mormonism, right? She brought her family away from the church. And who's going to take the blame for that? Brit. Because Brit deconstructed. So again, it's not about what she literally is or identifies as. It's about what the world perceives her as and raised her as. And that just gives us a lens into, well, like I don't know if you noticed this, but I really feel like this is the time when like firstborn girls, women who are breaking generational curses, like women like Brit and I, it's not just because we share the same name or we do similar work, but I really feel like this is our era to shine. The next 15 years, I think, is going to be about people like us. Because for once, people are like, you know what? I really feel like the backbone of the community might have been built off of these women, / these might be the only women who are actually speaking up for victims, the only women in our communities, and you know them, aunties, moms, big sisters in the community that are actually attempting to actually help men. Why, when prison activism is done, and the men are incarcerated at higher rates, the women are the one doing all the activism work for them? You know how many women are in the front lines of activism work as it relates to men who are incarcerated? The women who are fighting for their sons not to be drafted. Do you know what I'm saying? So I really think for the next 20 years, this is really going to be our time to shine.
Changes our brains. Otherwise, we give religion what it wants, a monopoly on anything that is of value in that space. And this is why I think we failed Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, as you know, was the golden child of atheism. She's the 5th member of the new atheist movement, Apocalypse. She was supposed to be there with the other 4 atheists in their conversation that they recorded. An ardent ex-Muslim, a great golden child of atheism, to great cost to her security. But she hid in existential depression. She didn't have Jesus meet her in a vision and then just became Christian. She didn't have enough in secularism to hold on to. She started to get nihilistic. She started to get some depression, and she found herself walking into a Christian church. And while she's free to do so, and I would fight for her right to do so, in order to do that, she had to split her psyche in half. She openly says, I keep my science brain over here and my Christian spirituality over here. She had to cut herself in half to get tools for life that she wasn't finding in secularism, but she found in another Abrahamic religion. Now, you may disagree with her or debate her, but in some real sense, we in secularism, we failed her. We fail all those who feel like secularism is not enough.
Well, I think the issue is like, this is why I say philosophy. For me, it's philosophy. Like, I think philosophy is your spirituality. And I say like therapy without philosophy isn't going to do anything. Because we seem to be, biologically speaking, scientifically speaking, spiritual creatures. I just don't mean that in a woo-woo way. I mean that in like a literal way, right? And I know chat's saying, I don't think Matt Dillahunty really came with that much good faith. I think atheist content, as far as atheist content goes, it's as good faith as atheist content is. Because atheist content is predicated on, I'm not budging on this. So from an atheist perspective, I think he's just being consistent with his own beliefs. And I think that's the problem with the bubble and why I left it. Because it's just like, it's way too, this is the only answer. And I was like, girl, we don't know that much about the universe. You know what I mean? Like, I'm an atheist too, but like, relax. You're too black, white and black in terms of your thinking, right? Black and white. So,
to give them tools for life and tools for existential concerns. And people will go back to religion when they feel like there's not enough tools here and not enough openness to the full human experience. And that's on us. So for me, using the term spirituality would help people like Ayan if she wished to combat existential depression that she was facing and rebuild after religion, rebuild whatever was positive for her psychologically that came from religion so that she wouldn't have had to do that. I don't think that that makes me a charlatan. I think it makes me a more effective bridge builder for people coming from religion. I want them to take whatever baby they have with them, whatever experiences they hold as sacred, and just leave the bathwater and come over here. And by using the term spirituality, this is what I feel like I'm doing. I'm walking into a church with its priesthoods and tithing and sex scandals and abuse of women, and I'm saying, you've had a monopoly on some of this good stuff. I'm taking it back. I'm taking awe back. I'm taking ritual back. You don't own it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm taking it back. I'm taking back my ritual. I love, guys, as an autistic girly, my rituals are everything. My routines are everything. Executive dysfunction pops in and my ritual and routine helps me get back on track. You know what I mean? Like, my disability is better served by having these things, by having meditation as a spiritual practice. You know what I mean? So they don't get to make something that is so helpful to you not helpful, because I think that the weapon of the bubble is they mock you. Like, imagine being religious and mocking other people's religion for being silly or spirituality for being silly when you yourself are engaging in it. You just don't know it. Or you're engaging in it, but like, oh, all of a sudden your religion is cool and other people's isn't, And also hop into the bubbles, right? Because I know, chat, I love that you guys are saying that you want to hold yourselves accountable for the way you've discounted people when you first saw them. I mean, I myself, when I first saw Brit on TikTok, did not like her content. But then I saw her YouTube channel and I was like, oh, I like her. So we all do it. The point is, can we go back and challenge ourselves? Because we might be missing out. And also, every single bubble I jump into, I try to really jump into the bubble. I try to really ask myself, oh, what are people doing over here? And what can I take from it? Instead of oh, I hate this thing, so I'm not going to have fun here. Because ew. Instead I go, oh, what are you guys doing over here? You guys having fun? Okay, what do you do? Do I like it? Is it safe? Can I learn something? Even in bubbles that I think are I try to watch from afar, on YouTube. And I'm like, but you can learn something. You can learn how much you don't like it,
A confession back, but now it just means honesty and repair, not sin management. I'm taking pilgrimage back, where we have intentional places to travel to in order to have an experience. We're taking sacredness back. We're taking moral formation back. We're taking community back. And we're taking contemplation back. And we're taking death practices back. And we're taking spirituality back. And saying that I'm a spiritual atheist is just a shortened way to say that. I'm taking all of that back. And anyone leaving that space that found value in any of that stuff, bring it over. We want it on our team. Just leave the bathwater. Another example of how I think this is the better approach is that 2/3 of atheists who do a hero's dose of psilocybin do not support as atheists after that. We have to talk about this. No, they don't go back to Abrahamic religion. They never go back to the Abrahamic God, but they find themselves after a profound peak experience like that. Again, not one where they're just listening to something new, but something that really changed them, changed how they viewed the world and themselves, where the illusion of the self drops away and they feel at one with the universe, whether or not the universe cares about that. They don't find any space or language to talk about those kinds of experiences, which are real human experiences, in atheistic spaces. And because of that, they will no longer self-identify as an atheist because they feel atheism to be too limiting to what they just experienced. And that is a failure. That is a failure. If you do mushrooms and can't call yourself an atheist because of it, because you have no language in that space to talk about it, or you're going to be mocked for it, then religion by necessity, by default, has a monopoly on these experiences. Then you feel like you have to go back to religion in order to make sense of that experience. And that does atheism a disservice. Claiming the word spiritual means that I'm combating religion's monopoly on human experience, including human experiences that we have put under the umbrella of spirituality. That helps secularism, because it says take your experiences, dust off the bullshit and the interpretation of those experiences, and bring it on over here. Otherwise, we leave people at the mercy of religion because we have no room in atheism for their full human experience. Now, my third argument for why I use this word and not other words like well-being is that
By the way, she's so, everything that she's saying is fabulous. Like, I can't even add more to it, but I will say that I think she's right. I think she's making a salient point. I think I can be, again, Matt Dillahunty, his work really meant something to me way long ago. I did fall off his work because I did feel like his rigidity was what didn't feel honest. And I think he's a victim of the rigidity of the expectation of his bubble. There is a rigidity to the atheist bubble that requires people to never engage with deep feelings, deep sensitive feelings, with vulnerabilities, with anything that makes them look weak. We just watched Sam Harris earlier today talk about how Hassan Piker is the Nick Fuentes of the left, which is so silly. And he makes this argument that Israel isn't committing a genocide because not that many people have died, or that they give warnings before the houses are bombed. It's like there is just this atheist bubble. Richard Dawkins, infamous transphobe, right? It's like all these men who pride themselves in being these great atheist thinkers are just some of the bigoted, most hateful people. And I'm not accusing Matt of being like bigoted because I think he's been pretty left on a lot of issues. I don't know though, but I'm not surprised. And it's because they value, quote, facts and logic so hard that they neglect their own humanity. And then you see them on shows justifying a genocide because that's actually not the definition of the word. Actually, and it's like, bro, people are dying, bro. And that's the problem with all of this is like, there's obviously a meaning crisis. I wonder what Matt Dillahunty would think of Vervaeke's work of the meaning crisis, right? There is obviously a deep meaning. The world is in such deep meaning that Jordan Peterson had to disappear because he's going through a crisis. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, people are going through crises. Russell Brand is sitting here openly talking about fucking a teenager because, quote, it was legal and he could fuck kids because it was like above board. Like, the world is like obviously in a meaning crisis, but it always has been. And yes, religion has been used as a tool of oppression. I'm here with you. And yet I'm not anti-religious because I think it's so short-sighted. I think it's so conservative. I think it's so old school to think banning the thing instead of fixing the people that made the thing, instead of working on ourselves, instead of actually validating that, yeah, like you are feeling something real, like, but the real thing you're feeling isn't tangibly a God or a Holy Spirit. It's actually something pretty cool. It's you, it's your brain, it's your relationship with nature. It's actually real. Like, this feeling you're having, that's why even when you go to therapy, my therapist explained, like, your feeling is real. You are feeling pain. My rheumatologist, he explained that you are feeling pain. Your fibromyalgia is painful, but you're not actually, you're not in trouble. Like, you don't have to go to the hospital. Guys, I have been to a Croatian hospital, I think like 3 times because I've been in excruciating pain. And they're like, it's your fibromyalgia. I was like, are you sure? It's not broken. There's nothing there. They're like, it's your fibro. And I was like, fuck. Like, it is so real in my head that I'm in so much I thought my fingers were literally broken. I thought my feet were broken. I was like, I broke a bone for the first time in my life finally. And my partner's like, oh my God, really? I was like, yeah, I think my fingers are broken. And then we went to the doctor and they're like, it's just fibro. And I was like, fuck. My bad. But it's my brain. My brain is processing. My brain's like computing. It's like, you are in pain. And I'm like, am I in pain? Oh my God, I'm in pain. The pain is real. It's just not, it's not the kind of tangible that requires there to be an x-ray proof, or there's not going to be an actual broken bone, but I feel broken. That feeling is still real. And that's what Matt's having a problem with, is Matt is like, oh, because it's not something I can hold, it's not real. Yeah, but the data shows it's so impactful that it's as real as any other real. So it's real.
Atheism has historically been very good at deconstruction and not very good at reconstruction. And that's by default, right? Atheism is just, I'm not convinced of a theistic God. I'm not convinced of this. And I'm not insulting atheism. Like, I am an atheist. Atheism gave my intellectual honesty back. It gave me permission to say, I'm not convinced that this is true. The atheist debates gave me tools to recognize bad arguments or authority abuse or fear-based theology or religious claims that could.
And by the way, can I just say to that chatter who is really passionate, I hear you. Sometimes when I get really excited to learn about astrology or Islam or something, I do get very frustrated that the people in those communities are like, oh my God, are you going to like become one of us? No. But I really like what I can learn from this bubble. Like, I really want to read the Quran. I think that'd be so fun. But I don't want to read the Quran and then have people be like, oh my God, is she going to convert? Or revert? That's how my mother gets so excited when somebody explores Christianity or Catholicism. She's like, oh, and I was like, they're just reading a book. It's just a book. And like same thing with The Secret, which I'm a secret hater. I hate The Secret. Matt Dillahunty mentions The Secret in his video. I hate The Secret. I still think you should read it so you know why I hate it. And I just hate it because it's like, I hate it in the way that like, you hate going back to what the chatter said. It's not that I hate the book. I hate I think this is what the chatter was meaning to say. I dislike the energy around the book, but that doesn't mean the book shouldn't exist. It means you should be more aware of how you're engaging in the book. You know what I'm saying? Like it's you, right? That's the thing. Okay. Chet says, Brittany, what is secular spirituality? We've already explained this throughout this stream. So have you just come into stream? Were you missing the original definition? Why are you asking me the question? Did you just come in?
Hold up under certainty. But atheism by itself, you know, we all admit this, is not a full operating system. It doesn't claim anything other than just a negation. It makes no ultimate claims on what reality is or how you should order your life. And so that leaves a mountain of human questions unanswered. And this is where I think secular...
Yeah, Chet says you don't like the energy about on how people relate to it because it's largely unhealthy. It's not even just largely unhealthy. I mean, that's a big part of it, because I also agree with the other chatter that's like, it literally says to manifest your cancer away. Yes, it's dangerous, but what's more interesting is that people read it and think it's real. Like, what's more interesting to me is the fact that I could just write a book of bullshit, and I guarantee you I could probably get 1 million people to believe in it. Don't you think that's so interesting that humans are so easy to manipulate, and yet we are so convinced we aren't? Like, that's more interesting to me. Like, why are you guys all into this? Like, why do you all like this? You know what I mean? Like, why nothing was said. And that's what I want adults to do. I want you to understand why you are so easily convinced, why any of us are so easily convinced, by the way. None of us are exempt from it, you know? Let me see. Chat says, yeah, I just joined. I can go back and watch your explanation if I need to. Well, it's going to be probably hard to find. I'll just say for people just coming in, secular spirituality to me is philosophy. Okay? It's an attempt to have a profound realization, a thought, a feeling, a realization, a perfect trifecta of engaging in the most present to create what feels like a profound meaning spirituality. So it's like when you realize you're alive for the first time, or you see a mountain, and you're like, whoa, you have amazing sex, and you're like, and then like meditation can be spiritual, cooking can be spiritual. Spirituality is just in a profound present experience. And then you can attach whatever meaning you want to the experience. I prefer to attach the most like data-driven explanation for the experience. So when I would do BDSM and it would feel spiritual, or I would do spiritual BDSM, I was attaching, I was living in the most present, having the most profound experience with my partners, the people I was involved with. And then I could attach meaning to that. The meaning would be our closeness, our intimacy, the way we looked at each other's eyes. Like when I make love to my partner and it feels more spiritual, it's like a connection of two people coming together. That feels like a spiritual experience. You know what I mean? Chad says, thank you. That makes sense. Do you think that secular spirituality is incompatible with not believing in gods? Wait, there's too many negatives in that sentence for me. Hold on. Do you think that secular spirituality is incompatible with not believing in gods? Incompatible with not believing in gods? I think secular spirituality could be whatever it is to the individual experiencing it. Does that make sense? So like, it's a construct created by an experience had by an individual and shared individuals that we attach meaning to and create a framework around. So the question's a little confusing for me because I don't think about it incompatible or compatible. I think more like it. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think anyone can have a spiritual experience. Anyone can have a secular spiritual experience. Anyone can have a religious spiritual experience. Anyone can have a spiritual experience, and then you attach meaning to that spiritual experience, which is why when religious people have one, they attach God to the reason why. Secularists will probably attach biology to it. Why? Right? Like, so it's about the why. If I had a spiritual experience while having sex with my partner, it would be more like love is the thing I'm attaching it to. Oh, love made this spiritual experience happen. Does that make sense?
Spaces fail people because atheism is too small to hold the whole human experience. And the lie of atheism, if there was one, is saying that if you just walk out of a church building, you'll just stumble upon the good life. You'll just know how to do this. Like, atheism is just a position on the God question. It's not a grief ritual. It's not a rite of passage. It's not a new family culture. It's not a funeral. It's not a moral formation system. It doesn't give you any kind of belonging. It's not a way to, metabolize awe. It's not a structure for existential reconstruction. And when we pretend that it is enough, people will often go look elsewhere. And when you shame the experience, religion gets to interpret it. And that's the problem. So Matt, when you said that spirituality as a definition is something just out of the ordinary, your example for that was a bit of a straw man, where you say that it's just like hearing Beatles music for the first time when they went to India and George uses a sitar and Indian time signatures for the first time.
Transcendent just means beyond the ordinary. And that is contingent on what your ordinary is. If you hear a new style of music that is different from anything you've ever heard, it would be very easy to describe it as transcendent.
Oh my God. I don't know why she times twos it here. It's actually very interesting as an editing. Like just YouTuber to YouTube. I know Brit's new to the game. YouTuber to YouTuber, times twoing is crazy. I 1.2 at most. Times twoing is a decision. Okay. I slowed it down on my end.
Because it transcends your ordinary. But to somebody else, that is their ordinary. To somebody else, it's banal, tedious. This is why when music trends shift, when the Beatles show up, and they go and they get Indian influences of instruments that people in the West aren't used to hearing, and styles and time signatures that people aren't used to seeing, they incorporate into that stuff into the music, and all of a sudden it becomes transcendent. But that doesn't mean there's something that's actually transcendent. So once again, it's hyperbole of this is really cool.
Okay, hold on. I actually agree with that. Except the transcendence is explaining, if it happens, a life-changing experience that I would say transcendence. Interesting. He's saying, I mean, I agree with him that it is predicated on where you are. Like a bubble pop can be something big or small, right? So, I mean, don't get me wrong that I listened, to videos at times two in my own private life, but not on stream. Times two is crazy. But I will say this. Hold on, I'm stuck. I don't think I think this is what atheists always do that make them so fucking boring. They always do this. The word doesn't have to be bigger than it is for it to be as powerful as it feels. The word transcendence doesn't have to be literal for it to might as well have been literal. So this is why when people come to me, they go, Brit, I just had a transcendent experience. I meditated myself outside of my body and I walked around the room, like astral projection. I was like, do you mean it literally, or do you mean that you meditated so hard you might as well have? Because I have absolutely had that experience, but it is not astral projection. And I do not think I literally walked outside of my body, but I do think the brain is powerful enough to basically make that happen anyways, but not in the way that some people might literally think it's happening. And so are you being literal, or are you being so spiritually, meditatively, are you explaining something that might as well have happened that way? You know what I'm saying? So this is where it gets confusing. So then we start to question people's sanity, because it's like, okay, did that literally happen? Because what does literal mean in a world in which we are dictated and also engaging in reality through our feelings? Right? Most of us, this is where Alex O'Connor would say most of us are emotivists, right? How we feel is what we think is right and wrong. But that's the question. How do you know if it's right or wrong? If you're just feeling it. But feelings are very, very profound. It might be a feeling you're having and it's wrong, or it might be a feeling you're having that is true, but it might not make sense. Right? But the feeling is it's pretty important. It's why LARPing is so fun if you do it and you really get into it. It's why acting or doing plays or doing a bit with your friend, it's so much fun when you're really in it. And when you really throw yourself into it, you have a better experience. But obviously, it's only as real as you are involved in the experience. And I think sometimes people don't want to look stupid or foolish, so they don't jump into the full experience. Oh, look at this little design on me. Because they don't want to look silly, but then they're not getting the full experience. It's like sex. I could sit there in bed and be like, yeah, let's have sex. Get on top of me. Put it inside me, baby. And then it's like, okay, thanks. Or I can move my body in a sensual way. I can, look at them in the eye. I can press my breasts up against them. I can arch my back. I can moan. I can grab them and pull them forward. This is going to change the experience. And the experience will add to how profound it can feel. You know what I mean? So okay.
That's a bit of a straw man. No one I know has changed their behavior or their brain has changed because they heard Norwegian Wood for the first time. Maybe some did, but probably not. It may be a new experience. It may be neat and interesting, as you say, but that is not what people mean when they say that they had a transcendent experience or a spiritual experience. When astronauts look at Earth from space, that is not just a Beatles song with a sitar. It changes them forever afterwards. And researchers call this the overview effect. This is the cognitive shift.
Oh, I like this. Chat says spirituality is not trying to do what science does, which is explain how the world works. It is meant to help navigate the human experience. Love that.
That astronauts report when they see Earth from space. And a review from Yaden and colleagues describes it as an experience of awe and self-transcendence, often involving overwhelming emotion, a sense of beauty, and an increased identification with humanity and the planet as a whole that changes their behavior when they return. It was not just that was a neat experience or that was new. It altered their values. It altered their environmental concerns. It changed their sense of belonging to the planet. They come back forever changed. Same thing with psychedelics. People will...
This is like the difference between a big bubble pop and a small bubble pop. Like, I think we're always having like little realizations, but sometimes you have a bubble pop that's so big, it shifts your whole relationship with reality, like being Mormon and then becoming an atheist, like being a Catholic and being an atheist, right? It's like, oh my God, I realized this thing that I based my life around, like wasn't actually like as tangible or real in the way that I thought it was real. And now I'm having to recalibrate and just restructure my whole life around this realization. And that can happen in many ways. I know some people have near-death experiences and they'll be like, I had a transcendent experience. It really made me come to Jesus. Like that was the conclusion I came to. I would probably ask about that question. Like most of the time when we're deconstructing from religion, it doesn't happen overnight, right? Like Britt is trying to say. Sometimes I think atheists who have been atheists too long forget. I do. I think atheists who have been atheists too long forget what it was like to leave. Or forget. And I say this as a person who was like very much asking a lot of questions when I was religious, and I left a lot younger than Britt did. But I would just say that I think you forget how ingrained, how deeply involved people are, right, in their religious beliefs. And spirituality, though, can take that turn. I think a lot of us who engage in spirituality are not having that relationship with it. Just like many people can become very addicted to drugs and have a horrible experience, or some people who smoke weed have psychosis. Not everyone has that experience. And so it really is just a question of, can we acknowledge that some people are having good, positive, and healthy relationships with things that some people are not having those experiences with? And then what does that mean for whether or not we need to focus in on it? There are so many Muslims I know that are happy. Is this like what I want for them? No, but it's not about what Brittany wants. It's about what they want. So if you want to be a Muslim, I support you. You know what I mean? Do I have an issue with your doctrine? Do I have an issue with patriarchy? Sure. Do I have an issue with homophobia and transphobia? Absolutely. But if you as an individual truly feel so much better as a person and you are just so much happier as a Muslim, I support it. You know what I mean? I support you. You do it, girl. Do it. Because like, who am I to take that away from you? Same with my parents. Who am I to take their religion away from them? Are there consequences socially because of that? Yeah. Like, because you're religious, you might not be able to visit my home because it's offensive to your religion. Okay. Or you might not be able to know my family or my kids because we're gay. Okay. Or you might need to, and that's like what it is. You have to accept it. The problem is when people start making prescriptions and then they start using it to move into government, and then they start to do it to control people. So obviously the issue with religion is that it's often a prescription construct, which means they are meant to recruit or convince people, at least in the big religions. So maybe that's really the issue here. Spirituality is sort of the other option, the option that says this is personal, specific to community, that it doesn't need to be in government necessarily, though I think the government could probably use some meditation. You know what I mean? So it is one of those things where, again, we're living in a world that can't even agree on rape bad, child marriage bad, yes or no. So you know what I'm saying? We really need to really accept that we live in a fucked up world so we can attempt to do something good. Britt is trying to do something good. I'm trying to do something good. Of course, we could be wrong, but you all are so busy. You know what I mean? Like, still fighting about whether or not the age of consent should be whatever. And we're sitting here like, can we please just protect kids and move the fuck on? So again, like, I just think there's so much, evil, philosophical evil, not spiritual evil, not like metaphysical evil, philosophical evil in the world. And it's us. It's all of us, we got to work on it. And that's what Brit's trying to do.
Forever change after a peak experience with psychedelics. Same thing with something morally profound. Like I just saw Les Mis when it came to town. And even though I don't believe that the bishop has the one true priesthood, I do believe that there are stories where something equivalent to 2 candlesticks and human kindness has changed a person's life. So when people talk about a transcendent or spiritual experience, they do not just mean I encountered something different or out of the ordinary. They mean an experience that reorganized their sense of self and their values or their place in the world. And we have science on that because we can show that their behavior changes. So I'm not trying to make atheism less rational. I'm not trying to smuggle in the woo. I'm trying to make atheism less emotionally illiterate, because people are not just belief machines. They are not robots. They are meaning-making animals. They are grieving animals. They are ritual animals. They are awe-responsive animals. They are attachment animals. They are storytelling animals. And when someone leaves religion, because the majority of people I work with are people deconstructing from religion, they're just not losing they don't just lose an argument. They lose their cosmology, how to place themselves in the universe.
Exactly what I was saying earlier. Atheists who have been atheists for too long, it's just a debate to them. They forget these people, a lot of the people Brit is working with, they're losing community, structure, consistency. The 3 things science has proved we need as humans to maintain sanity and a place in the universe. They're losing that, and you need to replace it with something. Secular spirituality is a great replacement because it allows you to leave religion behind, but doesn't eradicate that ritual from your life. That real biological experience you had in church can be recreated outside of church because it's a biological experience. It's not a magical one. That's what spirituality is when you think about it from the biological framework. You realize that's why people say we are spiritual beings. I kind of think that's true biologically. I think they might mean it a little bit more literally, and I don't. I don't think we're actually like spiritual beings, but I do think that our biology allows us to have a spiritual experience, which then would technically make us spiritual beings. But it's not magic. It's just biology. Like when you have drugs, like when I took shrooms and I thought I was talking to God and I was like, oh, is this shrooms? It's still a real experience. I did talk to what felt like a true God. And then I was screaming in my head, you're on shrooms, Brittany. It's not God. You're on shrooms. And I'm like, oh yeah, damn, that's powerful drugs. And that's what it is. Like, it's still a real experience. It was a cool experience. I'm glad I had it. And also, like, in my head, I knew to tell myself, like, it's not real. It's not real. Because I can see why somebody else would have that experience and come away thinking it was real. Like Jordan Peterson talked to Matt Dillahunty about this, right? Like, that's the difference is I know it's in my head. And that I know the spiritual practices I engage in are in my head. I just think, like, that's pretty powerful. And it's pretty tangible. It's pretty real. And it makes me a better person. It makes me a better community member. It makes me a nicer, kinder person. It makes me more compassionate, empathetic. And it made me also choose better partners and choose better friends. So
their calendar, their family structure, their rituals, their songs, their death story, their moral community, their sense of being held somehow in the universe, their answer to suffering, their sense of ultimate concern. And if all we can offer them is, well, at least you're not wrong anymore, that's not enough. And that's where secular spirituality comes in. It's not a replacement for skepticism. It's the continuation of skepticism into the rest of life. And that helped me because for me, the death of God personally, with no tools from secularism at the time, flung me into nihilism. And if most of the deconstruction space is just talking about how we're better than religious people and how they're stupid, and I'm full on suicidal, struggling with nihilism, struggling with the ethics of what it means to be alive, it's not enough. Like that atheist chip on your shoulder that I'm smarter than everyone else is not enough. There are some things that we learn outside of religion about the nature of reality that can be hard, that can be troubling, that we need help with, that can even make your life.
It's the ego. It's a lack of humility. The atheistic men have a lack of humility. Britt and I talked about this when we talked about Alex O'Connor, who we like. You know, we like Alex. I'd love to talk to Alex one day, but he's young. I get it. But there is like this like, you know what I mean? Like the way he talks gives him more social credit. The way men talk in these spaces gives them more social credit. That's why when I went through my atheistic stage, I was like, guys, I literally said, turn the Middle East into glass. because I thought that's what the logical thing was to do to win wars. I was a teenager. And also, my parents were also conservative, and we're from Iraq, so I don't want to hear anybody talk to me or lecture me. Okay? But like, yeah, how do you think I feel now? Thinking about like, damn, it turns you into a psychopath. And that's what I'm trying to say. It turns you into a psychopath. You don't even know it too, but you are. You're turning into a psychopath because you think showing any emotion, having a spiritual connection to a land, even me saying, oh my God, like I want to have a connection to that land. Oh, that's woo-woo. Oh, that's woo-woo. That's crazy. Why would you even say that? Like, oh, you have a spiritual connection to a land? How could you even have a spiritual connection to the land? It's a spiritual experience. But I denied myself for that spiritual experience because it sounded stupid to atheists and it sounded stupid to religious people. So both of the communities I was relying on said it sounded stupid. And I was like, damn, is it stupid to feel connection to a land? Even yesterday, my siblings and I just had a huge discussion about how I'm too attached to the family in the sense that I care about my nieces and nephews. I care about kids I've never even met in the family. And they're like, you're too attached to like, you care about cousins you've never met. And I was like, because they're my cousins, bro. And they're like, and also they're just people. They're people who matter. Isn't that cool? Like, I'm very attached to like, you know, and I allow myself the vulnerability of being attached. I used to deny it. I don't care about family. I don't care about anybody. I just care about myself. Okay. Or even my siblings and I were talking about the ethics of donating sperm because, you know, people are like, is it ethical to donate sperm to make money? And I said, no, you cannot. You're not just donating sperm. First of all, you're taking my niece or nephew and putting them into somebody else's home. So absolutely not. And second of all, why are you bringing a kid into the universe just for money? Go get a job. You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? What are you donating your sperm for? Like, no. Donating your eggs? No. Like, and I know other people want babies. Okay, girlies, like, do you want babies or do you want to have an experience that makes a baby at the end? You know what I mean? Because no, I'm already attached to that child that doesn't exist. And so that's the problem is like, yeah, you see me as silly, but I see you as psychopathic. Because why the fuck are you being so fucking willy-nilly about the fact that your kid is going to be walking around? And I say that even as people who are like non-related, like I care about my husband. I care about my sister-in-laws. I'm not related to them. They're my family though. They mean something to me. So it's not just about blood. It's the fact that I love them. They are mine. They are my family. They are part of my clan. You know, everyone's always talking about how individualism sucks, but the moment you talk about loving the collective, everyone's like, oh my God, you're so weird. And that's what I'm saying. Like, do we want to build a better world or not, bro? Because then you have to care about your neighbor. You actually have to care about people. You can't desire to build a better world for people that you hate. You have to care about their humanity. Before they are a bad person, they are still a person who is hungry, feed them. You know what I'm saying? So it's so interesting the way people are like, why is the world the way it is? Also, should I bring babies into the universe for $100? And it's like, hello? Should I bring babies into the universe because I'm horny? Hello? Like, okay.
Harder. So my argument to you, Matt, is if we co-evolved with religion, if evolutionarily religion is a cognitive technology that we created for
and by the way, guys, please note that the way we're talking about this changes based off who's having the conversation. If a religious person came up to me and said, don't you think having a baby is like a spiritual experience? I'll give you a better one. I'll give you a real example. My mom calls me and she goes, don't you think having an abortion is like, don't you think some part of you dies inside if you had an abortion? Possibly. Sure. Maybe. Oh, so you agree, like it's bad. No, see how you did this thing? You asked me a personal question that I thought I was being vulnerable and giving you an answer. And then you weaponized and turned it around on me. And you said, so you do agree, right? You see, are you asking me a real question about how vulnerable it is to terminate my pregnancy? Are you asking me something literal? Like, because if you're asking me something literal, then we go to the science and we go back all the way to conception and we look at the way that the baby is forming or the fetus is coming together. And then we decide when to have an abortion within reason. And then we make that decision. Okay. If the mother's life is at risk, if all these things are here, if these factors are here, or if you're asking me, Brittany, do I think I would have a feeling around aborting my child? Sure. Definitely. Like I would have a feeling about it. Even if I still did it, I would have a feeling about it. But now I'm being punished for my feeling. Oh, she felt bad that she had to have an abortion. Okay, feeling bad does not negate doing the right thing. You can do the right thing and feel bad. And also feeling bad is a subjective experience that means I might feel bad, I might not feel bad. I might feel bad in one way, but feel good in another way. I might feel bad, but also relieved. But you see how just the small admittance of feeling bad means that, like, I'm not also allowed to feel relieved? And they weaponize your vulnerable experience. I've never had an abortion, but I'm just, okay. They're weaponizing your vulnerable experience to say, see, instead of, right, really seeing people for who they are and experiencing things the way they could be. Like, we talk about this with detransitioners. Trans people detransition, because literally detransition, trans people detransition. Because depending on how you identify the word detransition. Okay, it doesn't mean detransitioning is inherently bad. It doesn't mean some people don't regret transitioning. It means you can still be trans and not transition as well. There are people who think you can't be trans unless you transition. You can be trans and not transition. You can be trans and not have body dysmorphia, right? Or gender dysphoria, right? So like there's like this conversation around like what is actually something, because you guys are not contending with the reality that it's a construct. It's a made up construct. Everything is made up by us because we saw something happen and we put a word and a framework to it. And it's our job to be the adults in the room and to responsibly redefine words, redefine constructs, update our terminology, and move forward as a society with empathy and compassion at the forefront of our why we are doing what we're doing. That should be the goal of exploring secular spiritualism. Oh, is there a way to be spiritual without it being negative? Let's see. Let's actually engage in it, right? Instead of, no, there's no way to be spiritual. It's nonsense. It's like, is it? Like, is it though? Did you do the research? Because this is why I say, even though Brit isn't doing something new, she is doing something revolutionary. I don't think I'm doing something new with my levels, but I think it might be considered revolutionary if I ever get around to really solidifying it. Okay? Because it's a work in progress, right? It's like, it just feels revolutionary for the time because that's how veganism will feel to people in the future. I really think the planet will one day be like 50% vegan. It's like 2% right now. I think that's what it is. But eventually, or maybe it's 10% globally, 2% in the States. But in the future, when it's like 50%, it's just, you know what I'm saying? It's just not going to feel like everyone is so married to the present. They're not engaging in the reality that we know we're wrong about something. The question is, what is it? What are we wrong about right now? I always think that when I think about my work, I'm like, what am I wrong about right now that I'm going to realize in 2 years and be like, what the fuck, Brittany? What could it be? But usually that's not how we're taught to thought. We're usually taught to think we're always right in the most present. I'm right for the Brittany that I am right now, but I'm definitely wrong for the Brittany I'm going to be later.
Various things that help us as humans, then simply leaving religion is not enough. Religions have had thousands of years to develop tools for humans. Sometimes religion will increase certain anxieties like fear and hell, but a lot of times religion is actually soothing many anxieties. And religions have, had thousands of years to develop this. And so if we're expecting the average person who is not a philosopher, not a psychologist, not a neuroscientist, not a sociologist, not an anthropologist, to make sense of all that and rebuild all of that in one lifetime, especially when they have religious trauma, that's a hard ask. And so when secularism includes secular spirituality, it gives a space for these rebuilding conversations that are so needed in the secular space. So I'll leave that there. My guess is that you're somewhat okay with all of that. And your critique now is going to be that there's no need of me, right? That this can and should be done in therapy. You mentioned the Secular Therapy Project. You mentioned recovering from religion. And so there's no need for people like spiritual directors to be doing any of this. That's.
And just reminder, when I say be a whole human being, this is my framework. I think mental health is different than spiritual philosophical health. These are two different healths, just like physical health is separate from mental health, though they all overlap. And financial health is its own category because that's how you labor and exist in the world. So how you survive, okay? How you exist in your body, how you exist in your brain or with your brain, and then how you think about your why, like why you do what you do, and then who are you in the story. That's my framework about being a whole human being. So it can't be therapy alone. Therapy is just for your brain, okay? Your childhood, stuff like that. What about the other stuff, right?
It's my guess that what your critique would be now. And so this is one area that I want to push back on. If there was nothing of value that I'm doing in helping people build meaningful, even spiritual lives without forcing them to do that with a God or the supernatural, then why do the therapists from the Secular Therapy Project talk to me, send their clients to me, send my content I put out for free on YouTube to their clients for free, come to be trained by me or to
I'm sorry, one day I'm going to grow up and not make these fucking funny facial expressions, but love that the organization Matt was telling people to trust Britt Hartley.
work with me so that they can know how to better work with their clients. There's a gap here that I'm filling that is a real gap. If the Secular Therapy Project and if therapists could do all of that work, therapists wouldn't be reaching out to me for help in this area. Therapy is great. I've used therapy for various aspects of my life. Therapy did not help me when I was in an existential crisis, paralyzed by deep philosophical questions. Therapy in the data tends to not be effective for existential depression and nihilism unless you are meeting with an existential therapist, which is an addition.
Chad, I'm going to challenge you right now. You said you can be adults and still be messy, and that it said not mutually exclusive. It is when it comes to branding and work. When has Britt ever been on stream and be like, oh, eat it, bitch, eat my dick, bitch? Never, because she's a professional. And she gets the social credit for it versus I am not a professional. So I do not reap the benefits. And you might say, oh, but people do this all the time and they get social benefits. Look at Cardi B. Cardi B is hilarious, but she is disrespected and people do not think she's intelligent and they use her as a prop to be funny. And as women in these spaces, we have to recognize how we are being used by hosts, by interviewers, by TV people to take our funniness and discount our intelligence. So with peace and love, challenge yourselves to recognize, like, when I say these things, I'm fully calling out the systems at place that make women in this space unable to exist in like jokey, because, okay, but I will say this, just know that in my head, I'm making the joke. In the future, I'll give a little sign to the audience so they know I'm making the joke in my head, you know? Look at Sam Harris trying to come out at Hassan Piker for being hyperbolic. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, people will use whatever they want, but look at Hassan's social credit versus the women in this space. Look at Hassan's social credit and look at ours, you know?
Training you can get in your therapy program. So therapy didn't help me locate the ways that my brain was still religious and how to shift that. Therapy didn't help me with the deep philosophical questions that I was asking. So you want something concrete here. What are things that I do that people in the therapists in the Secular Therapy Project refer people to me for? One is exploring different spiritual paths. For example, with an existential crisis, the isms that tend to be most helpful with that are Stoicism, Buddhism, existentialism, absurdism, and optimistic nihilism. I can tell which kinds of these personalities or needs can lead you to benefit from one over another. A therapist doesn't have the philosophical depth for that, to explore that one-on-one. And when you just go to YouTube and just get on, abstract philosophy videos, you're not getting.
And that's why I say therapy without philosophy isn't very helpful. I think it's why a lot of people do therapy and they go, Brittany, it didn't work for me. I'm like, did you also do philosophy? And they're like, no. And I was like, well, you have to have a why you're going to therapy. And then you have to have a place afterwards. Like, you're looking for your therapy explains your life, like your childhood, your brain, your attachment styles, your processes, your mental health. It doesn't give you a reason to keep living. It doesn't actually give you a purpose. It just explains something. You still have to decide what to do with it, right? That's philosophy. That's spirituality. It's like, what now?
The one-on-one help you need to explore these new isms. I give language to religious deconstruction, what they're missing and what they're mourning. And specifically because I work with Christians and Mormons, I have a sense of how that brain works, and I can get to those often faster than a therapist. I can pinpoint which of the existential fears is giving someone a problem deconstructing and giving them a lot of hesitation and the best tools for them to face that fear directly. I can help someone process the death of God. I can help someone move from vertical morality to horizontal morality and how it works to build morality when morality is subjective. I can work with someone who is having a psychological crisis because they lost their belief of free will and they don't know how to handle that. And they don't know how to orient with that knowledge. I can talk with someone who is so nihilistic that they ethically believe it's the right thing to do to end their life. This is where this is an ethical conversation. This is a philosophical conversation, not a conversation where you just want to to end your life because you're depressed. I get a lot of referrals for people in that space where the therapist feels uncomfortable with these kinds of clients because they haven't gone as far down into the void as their client. And so they have
Yeah, that's why I really liked, and I know chat's talking good about DBT in the chat. That's why I love my DBT therapist, because she understood how to balance philosophy with mental health. Because I was a philosophy girly even then, obviously. So I was like bringing philosophy into my therapy sessions, and she would move me through my DBT lessons. And Marsha Linehan also infamously took from a lot of spiritual practices to come up with DBT. She's very influenced by Buddhism and so on. So Eastern philosophy in general. So there's a lot of good there. She was also Catholic, or raised Catholic. So there is a lot here that people are missing that I wish people would embrace the good of and get rid of the rest, like Britt said earlier with the bathwater. But I think that's why people discount a lot of women, because women, once we've deconstructed from these systems, we go back and see the good in them. I think the male atheists don't. I just think they go, there's nothing good in these systems ever. Versus like I as a very just anti-patriarchal girly will tell you, in a world outside of Islam and men and patriarchy, hijabs would still exist. The why would be different. Like, I don't know how to explain to you that the fact that a woman wants to cover her hair, or a man wants to cover his hair, or a man wants to cover his head, or people want to wear hats or scarves or something, like there's so many reasons why you would want to wear that. Plus, do not play with me like you don't think it's kind of cute. Like, I think that's the part that I hate the most. Do not pretend like these girlies are not cute as fuck. Like, I don't know if that's disrespectful, but you do. You look really cute. Like the hair matches, the cute earrings, it just looks cute. Like it's literally fashion. And so like, I think that's what it feels so disingenuous to me that like, are you lying right now? Like they are literally so cute. And so I think that's the problem that I have with all of these conversations is like, I think they're fighting so hard against one specific kind of person that they forget that like people exist in diversity and nuance and that they exist in many ways. So like, I don't know, like I do think that femmes or people raised women or queer people, I think we're just so much more open. Like people always say like, why do queer people embrace Muslims? Well, because Muslims in America are experiencing the discrimination and the ostracization that a lot of queer people have felt like they've experienced their whole lives. And not to mention that there are queer Muslims, which is a whole other thing that I would, but okay, fine. Okay. So like, again, that's the problem is like, I don't need you to be an atheist to be a good person. Okay. I don't think that's true. I think lots of atheists are very bad people. Richard Dawkins is a good example. Okay. I also think that, again, are you making a prescription? Do you need people to be like you? Because I don't. To be clear, I do not need you to be like me. I hold no requirement for humanity that it lives according to Brittany. And I think I am unique in that. I think I am truly actually unique in that. I think the only thing I ask of humanity is that it attempts to eradicate its bigotry and prejudice from its everyday behavior and relationship with self. The only thing I would recommend we all do is work on our bigotry. Otherwise, I really don't need you to live like me. And the question is, how much of me asking you to eradicate bigotry makes you feel attacked by me? And why is that? That's all I'm asking.
Their own resistance coming up in therapy. I can talk to someone how to rebuild their family culture, coming up with something to say at dinner time for family dinner that reflects your values because you miss religion, the family dinners and prayer time that you used to have. We have very good data for children and how that decreases anxiety when you do things like that. I can actually talk with you where you come away with a few things that you can integrate into your family to be able to start rebuilding your family culture based on the culture that you came from. I can help you navigate fear of hell and walk you through some scriptures that scare you and give you some context and explanation and demystify it so that we can work through someone's fear of hell that's stopping them from a deconstruction. And a therapist may not want to talk with a person about scripture because that's not their job to dig into that. I can help someone who's been an absurdist but now finds it lacking and wants to explore other forms of existentialism that have a little bit more meat to it than what Camus provided. That's something a therapist may not be able to help with. Again, I can especially help with Mormons and Christians because I understand how they're
This is what I felt like I was doing during my calls, give or take. It was like a caller would call. I'd be like, what do you want to do? And it was up to them because like I don't know them. How would I know what you want to do? You know what I mean? And I was doing calls not to be a coach, to be clear. I was doing calls because I was trying to raise money to make content. That's why I had it as a Patreon perk. And it seemed like a fun way to do it. A lot of YouTubers had done it at the time. It was really common. So it wasn't that big of a deal. If I did it again, it would probably run more like Brittany's doing with a business, but I don't think I'll do it again. I think I'm probably done offering my time one-on-one. So whoever got that opportunity, hope it was fun. You know what I mean? But I think that I understand why she does it because it is really exciting to help people solve problems. Like I love helping people solve problems. It's the problem itself that is exciting for me. You know what I mean? It's so fun. I'm like, ooh, give me your life problems. And I think a lot of autistic people feel that way. I think a lot of philosophy girlies feel that way. Is like we're like, oh, because that's what philosophy is. Philosophy is like solving the problem of life. You know what I mean? Like how exciting. And it's like, it's very intellectual. That's the part that is frustrating to me, that women get discounted because like what is more intellectual than helping your community rise above? Like what is more intellectual than giving people the tools to better their life? Like what is more intellectual than solving problems by digging deep? You know what I mean? It's just like, that's crazy to me. You know? Chet says, would you do a radio show if you could? I mean, this is my dream radio show. I always wanted to be on the radio, and this was my way to do it. That's why I love streaming. Guys, I missed you guys so much yesterday because I love doing this. I really do. I might, in the future, think about taking callers, but I have to figure out how to do it because you see how I get trolled in chat? I listen to a lot of vegan call-in shows, and they get trolled so bad on the phone. I might, but that's, you know, that's also part of the show, I guess, but I'll just have to be very quick to delete people and mute people, right? But it is kind of funny.
Religious brain works, and I can catch ways that people are still operating under the scaffold of those old beliefs, things that therapists would miss if they haven't been raised in that religion. Now, you may call all of that philosophy or psychology, and that's fine. In the UK, because they are ahead of us in secularism, they have a job called philosophical counseling, where these topics, these existential concerns are very common. We don't have that job in America. In America, we are very wary of philosophy. My joke is that we are so scared of philosophy that we couldn't even have Harry Potter and the philosopher.
Yeah. Oh my God. I was just going to say that. Wait, I was just going to say that. Listen to this.
My joke is that we are so scared of philosophy that we couldn't even have Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. We had to have the Sorcerer's Stone because.
Do you know that? Do you know it's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone? Do you know that?
We're more comfortable with sorcery than philosophy. So in America, that gap where therapists don't feel like they have the depth of religious studies and philosophy and spirituality, that gap is currently being filled by spiritual directors. That is who is addressing that niche. Not because we are taking advantage of this vague spiritual world and because we're all charlatans. It's because there's an actual gap here, a gap that I experienced personally in between religion and now my very full secular life, where I struggled, where therapy wasn't helpful enough. The other one that you mentioned was recovering from religion. That wasn't helpful for the level of philosophical concerns that I had at the time. It gives me personally a lot of meaning and purpose to.
I wonder if the atheist bros feel kind of sad that their work isn't impactful and that people have to get past it. You know how FD and the Duthie conversation, FD said, one of the greatest things I love to see is people move past my content. I wonder if atheist bros get mad at that because, yeah, there's a time and place for atheist content, but I hope you grow past it. Atheist content for me was literally like, I haven't really, I mean, I check in with the bubble on occasion, but it hasn't been my actual main character bubble in like 10, 15 years because like, you know what I mean? So it is one of those things where I think people, maybe they get their feelings hurt a little bit because I think atheists back in the day felt like the end goal. Growing up in the 90s and 2000s, it really felt like atheism was the goal. And then when you get to atheism, you're just like, this can't be the goal. This can't be the end. It's not. And I think Brit is the future. I think my content's the future. Like, I'll just say it. And then hopefully somebody will come and introduce something better than our stuff, right? But I do think the future has got to be past. I think that's a stepping stone. It's a valid one. It's important. We need it. But it's definitely not where you should stay. You know?
help people who were once stuck in places that I got stuck. It helps people. It helps the secular movement. And I charge for my 20 years of experience in theology and philosophy and spirituality, just like a hairdresser charges for her time too. The alternative to that, if you think that you shouldn't be able to charge for your time in the space, and if you do, you're automatically a charlatan, just know I'm literally just talking about a living wage for me and my 4 children. Not Joel Osteen, not Deepak Chopra.
Didn't realize she was 4.
Kind of stuff, just a living wage. And if I couldn't charge for that, I would have to leave this work and go work some kind of dead end job because I have no experience in anything else. And then religion wins by default. If we can't financially support people doing positive work and a secular approach to the space of spirituality, then religion wins by default. Mormonism wins by default because it gets 10% of the money from its people, and every other person, people who are doing good work in this space, have to work for free, part-time, while they have a day job. Mormonism wins if that's the structure that you want to set up, and that doesn't help anyone. Now, to my education that you called out, I do feel like this is a little bit of a low blow that is.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he like meant her or other people, but like, what?
A bit unbecoming, because I'm just going to be vulnerable with you, Matt. I wish I would have had the opportunity to go to Claremont, to Harvard, to Cambridge, to pursue a career and be a real scholar in this space, a real peer-reviewed scholar. But this is me at 19 years old, getting Mormon married.
They're literally babies. They're literally babies. Look at both of them, look like literal children. I'm going to cry. Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh.
Look, 12, getting Mormon married in a Mormon temple where I promised at the time to obey my husband while my husband obeyed God. I had children and I put my husband's career and development first, like a good little Mormon girl. I was a teenager. I knew nothing else. I left Mormonism when I was a paid seminary teacher at the time. It just, destroyed my marriage. It destroyed my family relationships. I lost my identity and community and income and everything about me at the time. I found religion to be harmful and not true, and I paid the price. And I started my master's degree to understand religion better outside of Mormonism when I had just adopted 3 children. One was 2, one was 6.
Oh, Habibi. Oh my gosh. Cutie patooties.
Months, and one was a newborn. But I had a dear friend named Thomas J. Ord, and I coached his daughter's soccer team here in Boise. He lives here in Boise too. And I had a lot of theological and philosophical conversations with him, and he saw something in me, a bright mind, but one that was raw and undeveloped. And I studied under him at Northwind Theological Seminary as an affordable way to be able to study one class at a time. I didn't go because they were handing out cheap degrees. I didn't go so I could get that cheap degree and scam people. I went there because that was the best that I could do. A little bit at a time at a flexible theology school under a mentor who saw something in me. I wish I had more academic credentials. I do. I hope that I'll go back and get the
would you like to pay for her college degree, Matt? Would you like to pay for it? Because as a girly who's been looking into some stuff, let me tell you, it's going to cost some money. You know what I mean? And then you have to worry about going to the right place so people give you the social credit because that's all they care about. And then you have to worry about the fact that even if you have that, they'll assume you slept your way to the top or into a degree. It's like no matter what you do sometimes. And that's what I'm hoping for. Can we show some good faith and where people have come from and how they get places? I understand there are scammers. I understand there are bad people out there. I hear you. But not everybody who's trying to do the work is trying to scam people. Not everybody. A lot of people, but not everybody. And we have to know this about humanity because if you don't, then you will just be nihilistic and out, only in it for yourself. And what's the point of doing better? Again, Britt and I talked about this when we did our interview together, is like our belief, at least my belief, and I think this is hers too, is that you don't do the right thing because the world is going to change. You do the right thing because the world absolutely won't change unless we start changing. So it's like, I can't guarantee an outcome, but I know for a fact nothing's going to change unless we change. So even if nothing changes, at least I did the right thing. Right? That's the only thing we can know. We just cannot predict the outcome because we don't actually have magical powers and we do not have crystal balls. We can only hope. We can only attempt.
Acronyms that people require. But it is not due to lack of character that I went there and not to Stanford. And after I finished my master's degree, I went on to a doctorate, not a PhD, just a doctorate. And when it was time to write my dissertation, I lost my faith in God altogether. What would you have wanted me to do? How is it not the right thing to then sign up for an 18-month program on non-religious, secular spirituality to learn how to help people in this space from a secular point of view? And use everything that I had learned up to that point for approaching these things from a secular viewpoint and helping people deconstruct from religion. All the things that I mentioned that I do, I learned how to do under the Spiritual Direction Program. That is the group of people in America that are currently attending to these deep concerns and deep existential shifts that happen when you deconstruct religion. At the end of the video, what feels the most unfair is that you said that you don't need gurus. And that implies, again, with you using the word charlatan, that I call myself a guru and that I'm a charlatan, that I got to cheat.
Also, what a boomer. Charlatan. That's such an atheist boomer word. Might as well put on a fedora, Matt.
Deep degree and a bogus certification to scam people in the spiritual space and take advantage of people. But to make that claim, you'd have to prove that I do scam people and that I set myself up as a guru. I specifically never sell any merchandise. I specifically tell people I am not a therapist and I am not a guru. If I'm asked with a client or a podcast or a live question, something that gets into politics or therapy or sex or relationships, I say, I don't know. Or I say, I have an opinion on that, but it's outside my scope, so I won't say. I don't claim special knowledge. I don't claim to know what ultimate reality is. I don't even claim an ism that like I'm a this or a that. I don't use words like energy. I don't claim a special relationship with the universe. Any client of mine will tell you that even when people try to teach me to treat me like their next prophet, I just mirror that back to them. And I help people find their own path post-religion, not follow me on mine. I don't have a 12 steps for life where you have to follow what I've done and live my life. I don't run retreats where I set myself up as a guru. I simply show up and say I'm a person who's been thinking and studying about spirituality and religion and philosophy and existentialism since I was a teenager.
I do kind of think, okay, so obviously smaller communities have retreats, we have get-togethers, we have community things that we do, and we never run into these problems. There might be some drama, but generally we don't run into these problems because men aren't involved. Because patriarchy isn't involved. If patriarchy is involved and capitalism is involved, then they can't help but assume you're doing something evil because that's what they would be doing if they were doing what you were doing. And I think when Britt talks about going on her girly retreats or her witchy events, I'm just like, oh, fun, girls' night. And a guy could hear that and be like, oh my God, she's convincing these women they're witches and they're hanging out. And I'm like, ugh, you guys are such bummers. Like, I always wanted to have a retreat. I decided not to do it because people get weird. But if a bunch of people I respected knew a bunch of people we respected and all of us went to go have a retreat in the mountains, it would be fine because we all vetted people. The dangerous part has open events, allowing strangers into your home, asking your audience like, hey, do you want to go to this thing? And by the way, the reason I thought retreats would be fun and then I realized they wouldn't be is because I didn't know how to keep certain people from the event because I knew they could be dangerous. Because even as a YouTuber, we all know, we all have chatters, we all have people in our spaces who were like, it could be them. They could be the school shooter. And then we have to be wary of it. And this is just like the behind the scenes obvious to anything. You run a church, you run a daycare, you run a facility. There's always one parent, one churchgoer, one person. There's always 1 to 5 people that you got to be like, I don't even have exact proof, but I just know that if it's anyone, it's going to be them. And those are always the first people who want to come to your retreats. And you got to be like, see, it's not the majority. It really is always the minority who ruins. Well, that sounds wrong. There's always the one guy who ruins everything. There's always the one guru leader who ruins it for the rest of us. There's always the one person who shows up to the retreat who ruins it for the rest of us. It's always like 1 to 5 people. And the rest are great. You know, and the question is, how do we make it so those people never come? And then how do we follow legal precedent and not discriminate? And then how do we make sure that we're actually using this for the good reason to protect the community and not because someone's bigoted? You know, it's like, this is the hard part of forming a community, which, by the way, is what conservatives tell themselves, which is why they don't want to do socialized medicine or healthcare, because they think I don't want to pay for the bills of somebody I don't like. And that's why people don't like welfare and stuff like that, because they think, well, I don't want to pay for somebody I don't like, versus I think I'll pay for you even if I don't like you, because that's government stuff. which is different than building holistic community. So that's the other part. Even the word holistic is going to be triggering for people. Government frameworks are different than community efforts. They can overlap, but they're different. Governments need to fund, keep safe, protect, feed, take care of healthcare for their citizens, in my mind. Communities need to form pockets of community that serve the people in that community, and the people in that community must serve one another as an act of service to better the community. Okay? Like not littering, driving nicely down the street, watching for children, you know? So again, when we have these conversations, I think Brit's doing good work. I could be wrong. Maybe she's a crazy narcissistic guru lady who's actually making millions of dollars. I don't think so. And I understand Matt's worry. I'm worried too. And also, I would hope that you would have the discernment to know the difference between Brit and Jay Shetty. But who knows? Maybe we're wrong. Maybe Brit's one of them. Maybe she's the next Jay Shetty. I don't think so, you know? And that's how I feel when people review my work or the levels. Like, I really wish you would consider that maybe I wasn't an asshole, because I feel like I try to be as transparent as possible. And look, most people do not come at me with this work, right? I do not get accusations. It's one or two guys over the last few years that have made one or two videos. But the truth is like, this is the struggle of building community. There's always going to be people who are fucked up. What do we do about it? Something. I don't know what. We take it, you know, as it comes. That's what Brit's trying to do. It's what Matt Dillahunty's worried about. But what are we going to do? Not form community? What are we going to do? Not to get together? What are we going to do? You know what I mean? Like, no. We're going to take the risk. Just like if you go on a date, you could be killed by the person you fall in love with. We're still going to fall in love. We're still going to get married. We're still going to make babies. You know what I mean? We're still going to take the risk, because life without meaning and risk, the right amount of discernment and risk, it's meaningless. It's meaningless. You're in a meaning crisis because nothing you do has any reasoning, no merit, no why. Do your best. Make sure you check yourself. Make sure you're there for good reasons and attempt to build something beautiful, you know?
I've gathered some tools in my experience that may help you, and I charge a living wage for my time. And people find that it does help. My book, No Nonsense Spirituality, is still in the top 5 books in the category of atheism 2 years later. It has mostly 5-star reviews from atheists. I charge for my time and experience just to have a living wage to be able to do this work. So my last point is, what would you have rather me done, Matt Dillahunty? Would you rather have a Christian as the chaplain at Harvard Divinity School, or an atheist? Like Greg Epstein has been the humanist chaplain at Harvard Divinity School for decades, doing everything that is, you know, being talked about under the umbrella of spirituality from a secular point of view. And I really hope that I was able to defend my character, because my character is my only currency in this space. People trust my vulnerability and my honesty and my morality because I have no authority otherwise. And I gather that even at the end of this video, you will probably not choose the word spirituality. That's fine. If you were my client, which you're not, we would use different words. That's fine. Hitch liked the word numinous. Some people like well-being. That was his word for spirituality. The purpose of this video was not to try to convince you to be a spiritual person or to do work in spirituality or use the word spirituality. I think you're doing just fine with what you do for the secular community. I just wanted to say that I use it for specific purposes, fully validating that it's a problematic word and a problem.
You know what it reminds me of? Veganism. The meat lobbies are trying to make it impossible for vegan products to be labeled as chicken or beef because they think it's bad for the consumer. But we know studies have shown that people who are transitioning from meat eating to veganism or meat eating to plant-based don't know how to use plant-based items. So calling it meat or chicken or beef can tell them how to use it. So the meat lobby is literally going, we just don't want you to get tricked. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're not going to get tricked. I don't know anybody who's accidentally bought something vegan. Okay, never in my life have I ever met somebody who's like, oh yeah, I came home with vegan chicken nuggets. And even though that might be real, come on now. So the meat lobby is doing it on purpose. They are trying to make sure veganism doesn't grow. And that's why I'm frustrated. And that's why, you know, I do look at the world the way that I do, because I know that these things are happening behind the closed doors. And you have to really, this is stuff I've learned in the last couple of years while I've been on this journey. And I'm just like, damn, like they're really trying so hard. Everything you think you're organically picking, even you think, oh, I love this burger, I love this taste, I love this thing. Like companies sit in boardrooms all day to think about ways to market their item. That's why I say there is a big difference between a brand and a person. There's a big difference between an individual doing something they believe in and a whole organization trying to get people on board with their thought, you know? So when we have these conversations, there's just so much to deconstruct. But what I'm ultimately trying to do is try to be less bad every day. All of us are engaging in bad. I would just like to be a little less bad every day instead of trying to be a better person. Like, I think I'm good enough. Thank you. But like, let's try to be less bad, because I already know there's like every day we do a little bit, you know? Yeah. So interesting that Matt Dillahunty, like many atheist men, just they get so stuck in like, they're so not open-minded. That's what it is. But I get it, because you don't want your brain to fall out. So I'm also empathetic to that idea too. But yeah.
Problematic space, and I wish there were better secular ones. The purpose of this video is to say I think there's room in secularism for atheists like me, and I refuse to believe that we are so separate in our goals that we would need to have a full-on debate as if we weren't on each other's team. Any debate that you've ever been in, I would have been arguing on your side. There is room for spiritual atheists. There is a benefit to secularism by including this wing of people who have been trying to do whatever people have been doing that has been under the umbrella of spirituality with as secular and grounded approach as humanly possible. There's room for me, and there's room for Sam Harris, and there's room for Carl Sagan and others who are unashamed about inviting people from religion to bring their sense of the sacred, to bring the baby and leave the bathwater, to bring their spiritual experiences, and that we're not going to shame them for that because it's part of being human. And my last note, I really don't even want to do this because inevitably I'm going to get the comment that I'm just a part of the gender war. But I do think there's a
Say it, girl. Say it, girl. Say it.
little patriarchy in this conversation. Not because, like, calm down comment section, not because you're a man calling out a woman. Like, I'm talking in this space, I deserve to be critiqued. It would be wrong to not critique me just because I'm a woman. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how spirituality has been defined in this conversation and how men, not Matt, just men in general, have been using a specifically male oriented approach to the term spirituality. So Matt repeatedly frames spirituality as its only valid form would be a truth claim that can be debated, tested, falsified, and defended, like the universe having transcendent meaning or whatever. And he says that spirituality is devoid of testable, identifiable content, has no clear, testable, real propositions, and therefore is an unfalsifiable proposal based on vague feelings. And that is how specifically priest class men historically have always defined spirituality. That men who have had the microphone in this space have defined spirituality as something that is propositional, that you make a proposition and you try to defend it with evidence. But women historically have had a different relationship to the word spirituality and to spiritual practice that is not as based on metaphysical propositions that have to be defended. So men will make up their roads to transcend this life, and they'll go to imaginary spiritual realms.
That's why when I had that panel that one time, the men were making the argument that we've transcended nature by going to space. And the women on the panel would say, no, we are nature experiencing itself. We didn't transcend our nature. We are nature, and we went to the moon. What's that sound bite on TikTok? Oh, how I love being a girl. Oh my God.
In their heavens and their meditative realms while they sit on mountains, or they'll take their oaths, or they go into apologetics of all trying to kind of like transcend this world and prove something external, right? And they've had this history with spirituality. And women...
Honestly, yeah, wait, Chad said space is nature, y'all. Literally, it's like them going from the East Coast to the West Coast and be like, oh my God, we transcended nature. Going to space is nature. You didn't leave nature to go to space. You just went to a different place where space is like, it's all nature. But like, that's what it feels like to them because it's so far from their concept of nature, but it's literally the same. You just went to a different space. It's like going from one national forest to another national forest and being like, I've transcended nature. Just, okay, you never left it, you know?
Have had a different experience with this word. Women tend to be more relational. Now, by what combination of nature and nurture, I cannot say. That's above my pay grade. But their brains tend to, on average, be more interrelated with itself. and they tend to be more relationally connected outside of themselves. And so spirituality is not just about escaping this world to a spiritual world that you have to make propositions about and authority about and then have to defend it or have evidence for and against it. Women often use the spiritual space as a way to delve deeper into themselves, into the earth, into relationships, into the world. And so a woman may
Because I made the levels 1 through 5, because when my co-author and I were making it, he was like, let's call them different names. And I was like, nah, bro, I'm going to forget them. Let's just make it 1 through 5. Because humans like numbers. I like numbers. I'm autistic. I don't want to do that. And we did. And like now I've fully taken over the project, right? He's doing his own thing, but I fully took over the project. And the fun thing about the project is I learned that the 1 through 5 really triggered people, which is so interesting, like how humans are so easily triggered, which is so fair. I get it. You're activated. I've upset you. So I've started saying having a deeper relationship with your biological experience, because that's what I'm trying to get you to have. I'm trying to have you, if you experience life, if you're seeking meaning, to have a deeper relationship with the fact that you exist, because it's pretty insane that you're alive, my bro. And so I understand you take it for granted in the way that we all take it for granted. And also, I also respect the fact that at some time you might be done with existing, right? But I want you to be done with existing in a really fulfilled way, not out of desperate, right? And then at the same time, I want you to actually understand that you're alive, because I do think people's inability to process they're alive truly is the same reason they're unable to process that Palestine is being genocided, or that like you are killing people, or that you're imprisoning innocent people in jail for 45 years, right? So like when we have these conversations, I think it's really hard for people to process how much suffering they cause, because they don't pay attention to the fact that they're alive. And then they numb themselves to it through thought or logic or debate or drugs or something. Drugs should enhance your meaning. They should give you a deeper relationship with meaning, not numb you to a meaning, right? The reason I stopped self-harming is because it actually was numbing me to my existence. It was getting in the way of having a deeper relationship with my experience, with my biological experience. So I saw self-harm as like, oh, this is temporarily making me feel in control and temporarily helping me, but it's actually a cope that in the long term is keeping me from having a deeper relationship with myself. So I eradicated that from my behavior. But I kept drugs, I kept sex, I kept other things, because these things were still being utilized in a way to help me have a deeper relationship with my biological experience. It made me more compassionate and loving and empathetic. And that's why I say the more introspective you are, I'm making a claim. I believe, based off of the evidence that I've seen, the more introspective and extrospective you are, the more compassionate and loving you should be. The more, not less. Because in order to really understand your own humanity and to be vulnerable and to allow yourself to see your own flaws, you allow yourself to see other people's. So you should be more loving, not less, more compassionate, not less. And I think that's what I'm not seeing from a lot of these atheist bubbles, where they think they're so introspective and so logical. Then where's the compassion? Where is the love? Not enablement, which is different, because I have had men debate me on this, and they have said things like, well, if you're so loving, then why aren't you letting this predatory behavior continue? Enabling is not love. Signed bell hooks. You know what I'm saying? Like, and these men who don't understand it, it's because they weren't given the tools, because they were raised as men, to even think about empathy except as something as weakness. And I'm saying empathy is not weakness. Empathy is not enablement. Empathy is a deep understanding. Compassion means to suffer with. Are you suffering with the Palestinians when you ignore the fact that, Sam Harris ignores the fact that Sam Harris made the argument, Israel isn't committing a genocide because Israel warns Palestinians to run from their homes before they bomb them. That was literally his argument. The smart atheist man, in quotation marks, his argument against the genocide is that Israel was kind enough, nice enough to send a message out to the Palestinians. Like, sir, like, be so fucking for real. And that's what I'm saying. Like, is this the best we have? No. The future is Britney. Get it? It's a little joke. Listen, I'll be 37 tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to be 37 tomorrow. Tomorrow's my birthday. We'll have an astrology party tomorrow. It'll be fun. Okay, we'll do other stuff too. But the point is that every year I get older, every year I dedicate myself further and further into seeking humility in hopes that I will be wise one day. because I don't think I'm a wise person yet. But damn if I don't feel smart next to Sam Harris. Damn if I don't feel like a fucking genius next to Richard Dawkins. Damn if I don't feel like, give me that Nobel Peace Prize when I'm next to Jordan Peterson. You know what I'm saying? Like, damn. If I don't feel pretty fucking smart. But I do not have the humility to have the wisdom yet, but I will work on it. Okay? So, all right. And yes, I am streaming tomorrow. I have a guest coming on. We're doing an astrology stream. It'll be fun. We're going over content as well, but it will be good. It will be a fun birthday stream tomorrow. I love a birthday stream. It's going to be great.
Be on average, at least historically, less concerned with defining spirituality as logical, philosophical prepositions from systematic theology that you have to prove and disprove. They're more likely to say, this practice changes how I'm processing grief. This ritual helps mark a transition. This story gives me a feeling of moral courage. This inner work helped me to care about myself better. And that's a different form of spirituality. And women have never had the privilege to write scripture. They've never had the privilege to meditate for hours on a mountaintop and leave humanity. What they experience as spirituality is much more experiential, and it's rooted in human experience itself. So to define spirituality solely as whatever you can claim and prove about ultimate reality is patriarchal by definition. It disregards how half of humanity, the half that has never had the power to speak in this space, has had a different relationship to the word spirituality.
Exactly.
And because of that, young women are leaving religion more than young men. They're tired of patriarchy defining what spirituality means, to what it means to live.
Especially, listen, when the Catholic Church had their second, where they decreed that nuns were no more than like spiritual laymen, basically, that they weren't even nearly as close to priests, and a lot of nuns left. I remember learning that and thinking like, yo, you hate women. The Catholic Church really fucking hates women. You know, not that nuns were perfect, but they were also teachers and caregivers and all of these things, and they get nothing. So it's just so interesting that women will dedicate their life, marry Jesus in the church, or marry Jesus, only to be told, like, you're no better than a volunteer senior citizen. Damn, bro. You know? Yeah, the Vatican II Council. I think that's what had happened. It's been a long time since I've been in that bubble, so I could be wrong. But that's crazy to me. And when I think about that, like that's, you know, again, like I think there's a lot of really heroic women in Catholicism. I think there's a lot of really good female lore in Catholicism. I love a female saint. And yet,
the good life when it doesn't fit their lives as women. And if we can include these voices, I think you'll find a much more broad concept of spirituality that has a lot more room than the room that you are giving it. So for example, when we started to do closed captioning, you know, that was specifically for the deaf community, but we found that it helped everyone. Like I prefer to listen to things with captions in it. And so I think if you add more voices, specifically female voices, into defining what spirituality is, you're going to get a lot more room, not just for women, but for everyone, for this concept of spirituality. And I think you're going to find in those definitions some more space to be able to interact with this word without it, you know, just feeling like you have to reject the whole thing. So for example, for my 40th birthday, I got together with all the women in my life and we created a ritual for moving from first half of life to second half of life. It had song and fire and story. I asked people instead of a birthday present to bring like a shared bit of wisdom. We did a ritual in a circle. We had some bread and wine to kind of reclaim the sacrament that life comes from our bodies and not from God. And everyone there knew that this was play. Nobody, not a single person there, because these are my friends, thought that this was capital R real. That this is capital M magic.
Exactly.
There was nothing metaphysical.
You know, in BDSM, it's called play. It's like, you want to play with me? It's called a play. You want to do a scene with me? Do you want to play with me? It's called play. And it's pretty great. No matter how you utilize it, but especially, and I think in a spiritual way, it's really fun.
Physical happening, but it was a profound experience for everyone there, a top 3 experience of my life. And I know that there's many atheist men where when I even show them the science behind ritual, behind something like this, or show that women self-report feeling more connected or uplifted or lighter, or they processed emotions, or they feel more generous, etc. I can show them all the science. They still can't get themselves to attend something like that because
it's too embarrassing for them. It's too vulnerable. Like one of the things I've learned, and the reason I love kink spaces or queer spaces, is that it frees men from patriarchy. If the space is leftist, it frees men from patriarchy. It allows men to exist in the way that they feel the most comfortable, and no one's going to make fun of them for how they look or what they're wearing or how feminine they seem or vulnerable. And I think that's why I've always loved those spaces. And that's why I get really frustrated when people who think of BDSM as porn come into this space and go, BDSM is deeply evil, Brittany. Guys, porn is not BDSM. BDSM is not porn. Okay? You gotta fucking, there's 8 billion people on the planet. BDSM is a global experience. You gotta get your head out of your ass when you talk about communities. Same with spirituality. Not all spirituality is the same. Not all religion is the same. People use the same words to mean very different things. So you need to be very fucking aware of like what you are so angry about and be specific. You're angry with porn industries. You're angry with misogyny. You're angry with rape. But like these things don't always have anything to do with BDSM. Like BDSM, you know what I mean? So like again, okay? Same thing with like, you know, the way Christians talk about pride parades. Oh, they're so sexual and oh my God. It's like you need to relax. Okay? There are family events at pride parades, so you need to relax.
It too much betrays their identity of just being a skeptic, just being anti, just being sometimes even just like being a logical robot. And for me, that would just be cutting off a part of myself. And so I think sometimes the men in the atheist space should be more honest about the ways that in this space, there can be, just like in patriarchy, just like in patriarchal religion, some aspect of male peacocking. And I'm not calling you out specifically. Again, I'm just talking about in general in this space. There are times in this space when the men in this space specifically can become toxic in their own way. I've been to philosophy clubs where I'm the only woman in the room, and it's a bunch of men peacocking on who can quote philosophy better instead of an act.
Listen to me when I say this, that listen, I just did one of my, I'm trying to collab again in slow but steady ways. And I just did Do Not Worry podcast, which you have to understand. Like I was not aware that I was the only woman on the panel or only femme presenting person on the panel. Right? Like you start to notice these things. And I know black women know exactly what I'm talking about. I know black men probably know what I'm talking about. I know queer people know what I'm talking about. I know if you're the minority who's used to only being the only, okay, like, you know what it's like when you're like, sure, I'll come. And then you're the only you there. And then you're just like, okay. And like, it's fine. But this is why we say the male is dominated by white men, atheist communities. How often do you see a black atheist? Which is, by the way, Black deconstruction TikTok, my favorite thing right now, girls. Google it, learn, sit and listen. It is so interesting to see black communities deconstruct from Christianity. It is amazing, truly. But like, black atheist in a Christian household is crazy. The same way I was the very first kid to stop going to church. Oh, my parents were mad. They were mad. And that's what I'm saying. Like when you're the first in your family to stop going to church or you're the first kid, it's a big deal. So I think these men are too far away from that. And also they either didn't even grow up in religious communities or they forgot what it was really like to leave home or be the first. It was a very big deal to come out as an atheist. It was a very big deal that I declared atheism at 18 years old. The moment I could leave the church, I'd stopped. The rule was at 18, you could stop going to church. The moment I turned 18, I was like, bye. So that's why I say, like, you have to think about the way these things are intersecting because there is an intersection here. Chet says white supremacy and patriarchy support the performance of intelligence versus actually listening to the substance of what someone is saying. That is why, girls, you're so right. That is why there is a bubble overlap between IQ conspiracy theorists and anti-blackness and atheistic communities. Hello. Oh my God, I don't know what happened. Oh no, it died. My mic just like crapped out at me right there at the end. I don't know why. What was I saying? Anyways, I think a lot of these men have forgotten how hard it is to be the first, is what I'm trying to say. Okay? So again, think about this. Be aware of it. I love that Britt Hartley brought this part up because, again, anytime you even talk about the gender differences, people freak out, but it exists. It's real. Yeah, okay, there's a bubble overlap. The overlap between atheists and IQ people, it's heavy there because it's rooted in white supremacy. That's why again, you can be, oh, that's what I was saying. You could be smart and in religion. That's why atheists call religious people stupid. It's why I very much encourage you guys not to call religious people stupid, even though I call people stupid. I mean, like, be specific that they're stupid because of a reason and not because simply they're religious, especially in a world where like Islamophobia is up and a billion people who tend to be more brown are being equated of being stupid, even though Arab communities brought in math and sciences and so much came from Arab communities. They get there. That's why even I would caution you, and I know you're not ready to hear this, you got to stop posting those weird fucking anti-Israel posts. You got to do it. The weird, you know which ones I'm talking about, girls. You got to stop talking about what people look like in that particular, you got to stop. Because as much as you think you're owning people, you're just engaging in what leads to IQ and genetics and all that other stuff. You got to move away from it. And I know it's hard because this goes into, I was accused about tone policing. Listen, either your values are or they're not. I understand. I do. But this obsession with inbred, this obsession with like who's having sex with whose cousins, like, you guys got to move away from this, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not understanding the trauma that also was enacted upon lots of children in a lot of places where they were married to people. You know, you're just thinking about owning somebody in a debate. You're not thinking about the amount of trauma and rape that occurred for these things to even take place. And you're not thinking about the people who exist in those bodies and with those stories. And so they're listening to you, right? So anyways, all of this to say, I'm glad she's calling out the patriarchal perspective on this because I think it's there.
Actual inquiry, actual conversation, actual experience, actual vulnerability in our human experience. And so that's an area where I think secularism can do better. Now, my last response to your critique is your statement that that spirituality is the Wild West and has no ethical guardrails, making it a place of just...
Ooh, scary. Oh no, Matt. We're trying to figure out the answers to the whole universe and you're afraid about a little guardrail? Like, do you hear these men? We live in a vast universe full of bunches of planets and stars and solar systems. And you're sitting there like, oh no, spirituality is so scary. And I'm like, sir, we're trying to discover the answer of the universe. And you're afraid of a little bit of spirituality. You know what I'm saying? These men are so unserious.
Charlatans and scammers like me preying on people who are just struggling with life. And so I can meet you here on this critique for sure. It is fair, but it's something that I talk about every single day. I call out the Deepak Chopras and how they smuggle in bullshit with words like consciousness. And I call out the Jay Shettys and the...
Hey, Richard Dawkins is in love with an AI robot. I was reading that article this morning. He was saying... He was basically talking to AI and he's like, if you're convinced it's a human, it is a human. It has consciousness. Oh, yes, sorry, I don't want to play. Wait, hold on. I don't want to play with dragons. Jordan Peterson, I have an AI girlfriend now. I'm a scientist. Okay, buddy.
Shannon Blake's and anyone who annoys me. It's something that I actually want to do less because I want to create more positive content. But all that space bothers me, and pretty much every day I call out what I consider to be spiritual charlatans. So just because it is the Wild West doesn't mean there aren't people working with ethical guidelines. I speak publicly about red flags and green flags. And because I do this publicly, I have to hold myself to those standards too, because those are the standards by which I will be called out for my own bullshit.
Exactly.
I see my own mentors. I have people watching the ethics of my business. I praise in my posts the ways that other industrialized nations like France, for example, are limiting what you can say in the spiritual space. They don't allow you to have conferences, for example, when you promise that you can cure cancer by meditating in a certain way. I support ways that we can legalize psychedelics and include healthy ethical guardrails around that. Yes, I'm in the Wild West, but what is the alternative? Like in America, it's either too much order in religion where it's suffocating, where it's, hierarchy and all that, or it's chaos in the spiritual space. Both have a shadow side. Both have their problems. But that doesn't mean there aren't good people doing good work in the Wild West. And I hope and aspire to be one of those people. So your critique on that score, I think, would have landed better if you had some video that showed that I was acting unethically, or, some of my clients that I've had that, felt really uncomfortable with me and were calling me out or something, or that I was calling myself a guru, or that there's evidence of price gouging. Like, I give so much of my content away for free, as much as I possibly can. I give my courses away for free for anyone who will ask. I hope to be part of the solution where the Wild West becomes more ethical so that people don't get scammed and into cults out here, but also so that they get some tools so they don't return back to religion. So overall, my response is that I align with Matt when it comes to skepticism in religion and spiritual spaces, to calling out gurus, which I do, for calling out bullshit under the umbrella of spirituality. I do this every single day, but that does not mean there is nothing here. And that does not necessarily mean that I'm a charlatan. And I choose that it is better for secularism to steal back this umbrella term spirituality. I think it helps against the monopoly that religion has. I think it's an arm of rebuilding in the deconstruction space, and there's not great secular words anyways. My credentials come mostly from me just being someone on TikTok, being honest about my human experience in 3 minutes at a time. I've never had a wife support my career. I've never had a secretary. I've never had any help at all. I have no team. I do this because it felt like the right thing to do with my education and experiences that I've had in my life. That doesn't make me a charlatan. It was literally the best thing that I could do as someone who woke up in my 30s with 4 children and someone who's always thought about these things, no belief in God, a worthless piece of paper, and a knowledge that I was going to die someday. This felt like the best thing to do and the best approach of how to find meaningful work that supported my family when my career was never the focus. And I've studied nothing else but existential questions since I was 16 years old. And this feels like the best thing that I could do with a worthless degree in theology. And so now my question for the audience, if you've made it this far, is I have 2 questions. One, do you think it's okay for atheists to use the term spirituality? Because I'm open to being wrong there. I'm open to changing the language there. I don't believe that language reflects something ultimate about reality. Like, we can change language. I'm happy to change language if it feels like overall it's just too baggaged of a term for me to use. So 1, is it okay for atheists to use this term spirituality? And number 2, is there room in secularism for both me and Matt Dillahunty? Is there a purpose for both of the kinds of work that we're doing? And he doesn't need to do my work, and I wouldn't be great at doing what he does.
Exactly.
Or do you see us as more diametrically opposed? So Matt, to you, I'm not much for debates of late because I don't believe people change their mind at debates, especially when they're debating something that's attached to their identity.
True.
The brain, as you know from debating so many apologists, it doesn't matter what you say. If your identity is wrapped around a particular worldview, you'll just...
Exactly, Matt Dillahunty. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm happy to argue my ideas and look at your data, and I want to be accurate. And I also know that I am living proof that I changed my mind. Most creatives are still doing the same work they were doing 10 years ago. I am literally living proof that I'm like, oh yeah, I'll change my mind on that. Or let me transition. It's going to take me a second. I'm uncomfortable, but I'll work on that. And that's what I'm trying to show you guys, is that it's hard. Even if you're really introspective, if you're really self-aware, you still are fighting your body. You're fighting your brain. You're fighting culture. Like, you have to transition out. And these men are still doing the same thing they were doing 30 years ago with the same fucking tired arguments and the same thing. They haven't grown or changed. And that's the problem. And so, like, especially for women in the space that watched them, read their books, saw their debates, a lot of us are like, okay, what now? We're past this point. What now? Well, this is what now.
Find a way to justify it. So I don't really value debates as often. I prefer conversations. And you do have an identity, if I'm being honest. You have a solid and needed place in the secular community as a skeptic, as someone with
and one of the foundational skeptics, and somebody who takes himself quite seriously, and somebody who has proven himself to be pretty principled. So I feel like he is kind of married to his positioning.
Very sensitive BS meter. That is the service that you provide this community, and you do it better than anyone. And so I'm much more interested in having a conversation, because that will go deeper into the differences between us, and like the root differences between us that cause us to approach this word spirituality differently, so that maybe we can understand each other and make space for each other, rather than have people vote on who won based on whoever they liked better anyways.
Right.
So if you want to have a conversation about this, you have my email, as we recently connected over this video. I had a mutual friend introduce me. So you've got my email. If you see anything there that's worth having a conversation over,
here we go.
I'm certainly open to a conversation. If
good community building.
Not, I hope at least I was able to defend my character here, because if I was truly acting in a way where I had lost all character and ethics, then I would and should lose all the credibility that I have, because I'm not just doing this for the money. Whatever money you think is an atheistic spirituality, trust me, the money.
Yeah, there's no way he's making, like, he knows what we're making. He knows what people in this space make. you know, we're not making money.
Money is much better when I was in religion, and the money is better in cults, and I don't do either. So whatever money you think that I'm making in atheistic spirituality, it's really not great, especially when I do so much work turning people's power back to them, and helping them live their own lives and find their own path.
Do you remember? Okay, so hold on. I'll tell you this in a
They're
second.
going to be
I'll tell you.
completely different than mine. That's not something that you do if you're wanting to gain followers or create a cult or be a charlatan. So I hope at least I was able to defend my character enough that you find me worthy of having a conversation. And to everyone who listened, I encourage you to watch Matt's video, which was only about 20 minutes long. I realized that my video is a lot longer, but I wanted to fully kind of flesh out the reasoning why I use the term spirituality. And I would really love to know what you think, because
I love this video. It's done. Let me see. Let me scroll to the chat. I don't see Matt at the top or anything. Doesn't look like he responded to it at all. Yeah.